for today. He's going to chop to first. Pitcher covering. Luke Jackson puts the capper on a big win for the Rangers. They take the series 8-1. Mike, is your final score. Bruce Bochy's Rangers finally have a series win.
Well, it's nice for the Texas Rangers to get on a plane and have a series win. This was a much closer game than the 8-1 final.
That's what it sounded like yesterday on Roku, which was one of the worst broadcasts I've ever seen. That's no disrespect to either of those broadcasters involved. They did nothing wrong, but the actual broadcast itself, the problem is I couldn't see him for half of the game. We'll get into that later on today alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Cardinals dropped 2 out of 3 down in Texas, and if you did not watch this weekend, you may look at the final scores and say, okay, so they lost 11-1 and 8-1, and then they won a game 2-0. Did they just play like crap all weekend long? The answer is mostly no. They weren't horrible. I do agree with that final call there. I think the scores are a bit misleading. Yesterday, Eric Fetty, while that was one of those slop fests that if you watched it, you left saying to yourself, oh my God, Eric Fetty was horrible. And then you look at the final line, you're like, wait, he had a quality start? He only allowed 7 base runners in 6 innings. How is that even possible? So he left the game. Cardinals were still very much in it. And then your bullpen imploded and just a bad couple of innings. On Friday night, it was basically Graceffo blew up. It was one of those implosion innings similar to what you saw out in Boston for the Cardinals. So it wasn't a horrible weekend of baseball, but it was definitely disappointing relative to our expectations going in. That's a series I thought the Cardinals should take 2 out of 3. You added pitching advantage in a couple of those games. You should be the better team than the Texas Rangers. Alas, you end up losing 2 out of 3. Alex, what to you stood out about the Cardinals' performances over the weekend?
To me, it was the offense. And, I mean, I agree that these were a lot closer games than what the final numbers look like because you're talking about blow-ups in the later portion of the innings. But those later portion of the innings came down to where the offense just was not able to pull them back into the fight. I mean, those first 2 games, in the second one, of course, they win that one, but that was the 2-0 victory that Sonny Gray and the pitching staff did their job. But you went 1 for 8 in that game with runners in scoring position, and then in the first one that you lost 11-1, you were 0 for 7. So third game yesterday, that one you didn't have a whole lot of opportunities there. But to me,
overall for the weekend, 2 for 19 with runners in scoring position. You finished with exactly 3 extra base hits, all of them doubles, 0 home runs over the weekend. You also did not have a stolen base.
Yeah, that was the story. It was your offense, and typically going into that series, every single game, I said it on Friday, it feels like the Cardinals have a chance to pull themselves back into the fight, and that was one that they just were never able to. You were down 5-0 in the first 2 innings of that first game, and then yesterday you're down 2-0 early on. Those are both advantages that you can overcome. This Cardinals team has overcome, and this was just a series that your offense laid a dud.
That's kind of the way I looked at it this weekend. Was I have felt that their offense kind of helps uplift the pitching to where when they win baseball games, sure, they get good starts like Fetty yesterday you mentioned.
Yeah.
It was a quality start. It didn't feel like one. By definition. It was by definition one of those. But the offense wasn't there to help uplift him, right? The offense wasn't there to help carry them across the finish line. They did their job early on. They got a run against Jacob deGrom, and then it was just okay performance the rest of the way, especially from their pitching staff. Look, I think we all agree in this room, though the rotation has been good for the Cardinals this year. 1, it's kind of a pleasant surprise, but 2, like you look at their rotation, 3 of the 5 guys, you're like, they're okay, they're fine. And when you have just fine, and I think you had one of your fine starters on the mound yesterday, you really need to see the offense really take the game to the next level, and they just failed to do that. I mean, you mentioned the numbers with runners in scoring position. They weren't able to come through in those spots, and then the lack of power this weekend was very much on display. It was very much not a slug, baby, slug. T-Bone was kind of bored watching the offense over the weekend.
And to me, that's the story. It's really hard to win this way, man, at least consistently. You can do it. You can find ways. The Cardinals have found ways all season long to come through in these big spots, right? Alex, that's one of the things that has really allowed you to embrace this team. Mm-hmm. They feel clutch. They come up with the runner at second. You're like, that guy's coming home. I don't know how. I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't think it's going to be because everybody's rounding the bases because they don't do that a whole lot. But they're going to find a way to get that guy home. And this weekend they weren't able to do so. And part of that is because it's really difficult to consistently string together hits against quality pitching. And this weekend, I think you felt that. You felt the lack of the long ball because you saw it from Texas. a couple of their big innings, it came from the long ball, right? Like Simeon, the big home run from him. They had a couple others over the course of the weekend, and you just feel like, I don't know how we compete with that because we are incapable of doing it right now. So that was a little disappointing. The Cardinals are now 25th in Major League Baseball in home runs on the season. They have 52 for context. The LA Dodgers are first. How many do you think the LA Dodgers have? They have played 59 games. How many home runs, most in the league, do you think the LA Dodgers have? Again, Cardinals at 52 are 25th.
If they're first, I got to say they're close to 100. So I'll say 90, 98.
I was going to go like 101.
Good guess by Alex. 97. You did go over. Unfortunately, you cannot win. Nobody wins this game. But 97 home runs. The Yankees have 95. They're top two. Nobody else is close. The Angels are 83. They're third. Cardinals, again, 25th at 52. Dude, that, like, even if every single one of those runs is a solo shot, that's 45 more runs that the Dodgers have produced just by home runs than what you have on the season. It's just hard to live this way, and you felt that over the weekend. Alex, was there anything, though, from losing 2 out of 3 against Texas? Was there anything that you looked at and said to yourself, like, man, not just because it sucked over the weekend, I didn't enjoy watching it, but it, like, leaves this lasting memory of, I'm a little worried about that. Was there anything that actually worries you moving forward from their performances this week?
I don't know if it worries me because it was one series. Like, if this continues against the Royals, then I think I'll start to get a little concerned because that's two teams that you're the better one of. I guess if you were to pinpoint one thing, it's just the lack of ability to hit with runners in scoring position there. I mean, to go, and again, it's a small sample size and it's not the greatest pitching staff, but to go 2 for 19, like you mentioned, and 2 of them, you went basically 1 hit and 15 opportunities. That would be a little concerning, and you target the guy that has been so good for you this season, and it's been Ivan Herrera. Whether it's Herrera or Brendan Donovan, who didn't have the greatest weekend, if you lose one of those 2 guys' ability to come up with big hits, it does seem like your offense flounders a little bit.
Yeah, for me, it would be, if there is one thing that concerns me, it is, what does the offense look like when Herrera slumps? And the reason I bring that up, you look at Herrera over his last 10 games, so it's a small sample size, but you can tell he's gone cold. His slash line now is 152, 293, 182 slug. That's a 475 OPS. I think he's going to be fine. I'm not panicking about a slump.
We knew this
Herrera
was coming, and we were all wondering, what does it look like when it happens?
And when he goes through this slump, like, you feel the lack of slug. You feel the, okay, maybe there's not that driving in those runners. And it shouldn't just be on one guy, but it kind of feels that way during this 10-game stretch. It feels like, oh, where'd our star go? And I'm not saying he's there yet, but we've talked about it. There's a guy right now that has kind of solidified himself in the conversation of, hey, is there an active star on the roster? Could it be Ivan Herrera? Well, when he slumps, you're kind of feeling that right now for the Cardinals. So that would be one thing for me. The other one would be a little bit of a step back in defense. Defensively, you kind of saw some misplays this weekend, and with their pitching staff, that cannot happen. They do not have enough swing and miss to overcome defensive lapses.
Mine would be the bullpen, more specifically Kyle Leahy. You all right, buddy? Everything okay? Are you getting tired? It would be understandable if you are. You've had a lot of multi-inning appearances on the season. You're already up to 24 appearances this year. This is your first, like, consistent action at the big league level in a leverage situation. And if you look at his last 4 appearances now, 4 1/3 innings, 9 hits, 3 walks, only 2 strikeouts. The swing and miss stuff has all but completely disappeared for him. He has a 10.4 ERA in those last 4 appearances. It's not horrific, but it is not what it had been previously. Every bullpen arm is allowed a bad week, and that's ultimately what this is. It's a bad week, and really like a below average week for Kyle Leahy. He had one really bad day and otherwise was just like underwhelming and kind of scary when he entered the game. That's, to me, one of the things that I've got my eye on, is what does this bullpen look like as they're going to be counted upon? After today, they have 1 day off the rest of this month. You're going to lean heavily on that group, and Kyle Leahy is a huge part of the success that group has been able to maintain, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later on today. Steven Matz is another big part of what that group has been able to do this year, and if they want to stick to that 5 days off rest period that they've used to be able to stay healthy, it's possible they could go back to a 6-man rotation, and in that event, it takes Matz out of the bullpen and back into the rotation if they decide to go that route. I do not think they should. I think McGreevy should get those starts in the event that they decide to go that route. And you just call him up for a day, send him right back down, and boom, fresh bullpen arm coming up the next day. This is the Memphis shuttle that you could be operating with. So I think that's probably the direction that I would prefer to head there. The bullpen, though, to me, one of the questions that I would have coming off of this weekend, we knew regression was coming for the defense. They weren't going to be the best defense in the history of baseball. It was very unlikely this season. But it did show up this weekend. You saw that. Saturday was great. Defensively, an awesome game. That looked like Cardinals baseball on Saturday night. Friday and Sunday, not so much. Just some mishaps. I think Oli called them misplays. That's probably a good way to put it. I think Mason Wynn had his first error of the season over the weekend after I just said on Friday that he had 0 errors so far this year. I do apologize for that. That's probably on me. Walker not being in the lineup right now because he's on the IL. That takes the defense down a bit in right field as well. You're going to have off days. That's going to bring back that defense a little bit. So all of these things are going to play into it. But to me, Alex, my biggest thing from the weekend was the bullpen.
Well, it's good news, though, on the positive side. If you're going to go the Debbie Downer one like Burleson, you found out you got a hidden gem in a bullpen arm.
Yeah.
Right?
Only guy that didn't allow a run that day.
If I'm the Cardinals, you're trying to find a place for him. Shohei Ohtani, anyone?
He was a pitcher.
Yeah.
He was a pitcher. I think in college he was a pitcher.
At East Carolina. Mm-hmm.
So if Leahy...
Hey, that wasn't even his best fastball he's throwing. You know? He was holding back.
If Leahy falters, I got another high leverage arm there with Alec Burleson.
Moral of the story, I'm not overly concerned.
No.
It's one series.
If it carries over to the Royals, that's when it gets at least I'm not going to start panicking and sounding the alarm bells for 2 series, but T-Bone said it Friday, like this is kind of a pass-fail, and if you lose both series, that is a little bit...
to me, that would be disappointing. They played a month of quality baseball. They have earned the benefit of the doubt in my mind. Now, if you do it against Kansas City again, and then you suck against the Dodgers, and then you continue this against Toronto, all of this coming at home, yeah, like we'll talk about it, and you'll go into that series against Milwaukee, and we'll all be wondering, like, uh-oh, is it about to happen? Is this the spot where the June swoon continues? I'm very much not there at all. I think it was just a bad few days. That's my opinion coming off of the weekend, but we all reserve the right to change that opinion depending on what happens next.
Yeah, I'm not going to panic over the series to Texas. And even if they fail, my pass fail between Texas and KC and go, I don't know, 3-3 in that stretch, I'm not going to panic. But it'll be like my fire alarm when it beeps once. I go, okay, is there a fire or does it doesn't need new batteries? That will be kind of my question of like, okay, you just lost 2 series. When your pitching staff, which I think is probably your weakest link, I think I've already decided that's where they need to buy. Maybe I'm a little unfair there, but if that struggles against 2 really bad offenses and then your offense just doesn't come through to help lift that up, then there might be some questions. But again, it wouldn't be panic. It would be, okay, I see a red light flashing. I don't know if I should worry about that yet or not.
Alongside T-Bone and Alex on BK, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. YouTube chat is off and running today. NY is over there. Josh Jones over there. We've got Bazooka Tooth over there. We also have Bill in there. Kyle is over there. DJ Patty Cakes is hanging out in there. Come on over. Hang out in the YouTube chat. YouTube.com/101ESPN STL is the place to go to get involved. Coming up in 15 minutes, the Blues are running into the same issue this offseason as many other teams around the league, and one of the names that Alex brought up last week got a little bit more notoriety as a national analyst has now brought up his name as a potential trade candidate. We'll let you hear that coming up in 15 minutes. We'll hear from you at 11:45 in questions and answers. But next, Cardinals depth about to be tested in a big way. As I just mentioned, 1 off day after today for the rest of this month. What does that mean? We'll talk about their depth being tested next year on 101 ESPN. All right, the Cardinals' depth is about to be tested in a very real way. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, we saw this on display a bit yesterday. Oli Marmol got super aggressive in that game. He tried to take his chance. He went out there and he used Nolan Gorman in a pinch hit situation. He then ended up using, it was Pozo, right, that came in as, no, it was Valade that came in as a pinch hitter as well. And it didn't work for them, but they tried to utilize their depth. Alex, that's going to have to be even more important over the course of the month of June. They have today off, and then they will have one more day off the rest of this month. So when it comes to their pitching side of things, you're probably, I would imagine, going to see either Steven Matz enter into the rotation again, and that'll deplete your bullpen a bit, or Michael McGreevy as a sixth starter. You'll probably see some off days built in over the course of this month. Like you'll see, over the course of a week, Lars Nootbaar will get one day off. Wilson Contreras will get a day off. You'll see Von Herrera get a day off. Like all of these different things, we've seen this before with them. They're just going to do that, and that means the defense takes a step back on those days. It means your offense may have fewer bullets in the chamber on those days. I was listening to Cardinal Territory with Katie Wu, and she talked about this a bit on their podcast. Take a listen.
When we go back to Busch Stadium on June 3rd, we'll get 13 games before an off day. What we've known about this Cardinal starting rotation is being on a 6-day rest schedule and utilizing the hybrid role of Steven Matz really helped them in April. In May, they didn't need to do that because of the off day. Remember, they had an off day in almost every single Thursday of the month of May. June, they won't have that. So what the Cardinals are trying to balance right now is, how do we keep our pitchers healthy, track and work in a rest day? Is it best for the club to take him out of that spot? I'm leaning no. Leaning no. I don't know what you do with that bullpen if you take Steven Matz out to be a spot starter. What do you do here?
Alex, I think this is pretty simple. On those days that you need that sixth starter, you just bring up Michael McGreevy. Say, hey, McGreevy, here's the way that this is going to work. We're going to bring you up for a day. You're going to go ahead and enter the rotation, and this is like they've got a 13-day stretch here, basically. You call them up for that one start. And then, hey, that second turnaround, or the first turn, however you want to use it, that second turnaround, that's where the guys have to go on their regular rest. Or you end up with like a bullpen day that day. I would prefer the regular rest personally because I think the bullpen days really deplete those guys for whatever the next day is. I don't think this has to be overly complicated. Steven Matz is a reliever for you. If somebody gets hurt and then Michael McGreevy has to enter your rotation, now you can have that hybrid role again because he's probably at that point your sixth starter. I don't know who else would fit into that category. Like, I legitimately don't have the answer. Graceffo is now going down to be a reliever at AAA. I don't know who the seventh starter is currently for the Cardinals. I don't know that such a person exists. Maybe it's Drew Rum. I don't know. In that event, now Steven Matz becomes a part of the conversation again. But until then, dude, Steven Matz, you are a reliever for the St. Louis Cardinals. How do you see this?
Yeah, I mean, in the event of you're going for your seventh depth pitcher or your eighth depth pitcher, you're kind of bleeped at that point because you're dealing with a lot of injuries. I'm with you. Michael McGreevy is the one that makes the most sense. We just talked about, if there's any concern, which there shouldn't be because it was just a bad week for Kyle Leahy. But if there is concern of him starting to dip in terms of performance, if it's the struggles, well, Steven Matz is a high-leverage pitcher. Now, I know it didn't go well for him yesterday, but that was a one-off. He's been great for you in your bullpen. Right now, like the guys that I have the most confidence in are Maton, Helsley, Leahy, and Matz. Matz can't come out of that conversation. And you're talking about for 13 consecutive games, well, you're talking about maybe 2 starts for Michael McGreevy here. That's great. Man.
One, you can't bring him up for
I guess that's true. So,
unless you keep him up and he's out of the bullpen, but I'm not doing that. Just the one start is all I would get.
I mean, like, it's what makes the most sense because he's performing well for you, and that's kind of the role you've kept him in terms of you're down in Memphis, you're continuing to go as a starter to make sure that when we need you, you're available to come up, and you use that as a weapon. The other part of why Matz needs to be in your bullpen is, man, you don't have no more depth in terms of bullpen arms for you. Fernandez has not been doing good for Memphis. You're seeing Rodri Munoz, who wasn't the greatest for you. Roy Croft has struggled. Like, you don't have options that can come in and pitch for you out of the bullpen. So, yeah, I'm not touching Matz. Matz stays there. You're a bullpen arm for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and it's not like Matz is stretched out anymore. Like, you know how many times he's thrown more than 40 pitches in the last month? Once. And it was at 40. And that was back on when they had that doubleheader against Philadelphia. So, like, if you did decide to put him back in the rotation, My assumption is it is essentially a bullpen game because my guess is he's probably limited to about 60 to 70 pitches. And we remember that was kind of what happened with Matthew Liberatore last year when he would get thrown into where it was, okay, sure, he's starting, but really, like, best case scenario, you get, like, maybe 4 innings out of him. So I'm with you guys. I think you call it Michael McGreevy. You do the one start, and then you go back to the typical 5-man rotation, and you send down Munoz probably would be your corresponding move. Or if you wanted to...
And then Roy Cruft comes up.
Sure, and if you wanted to, like, you could have him start twice without having to send him down. But then you're running low on the bullpen for a 12-day stretch.
Yeah.
I wouldn't personally do that, but if you are believing, hey, we want to do a 6-man and we want to do it twice in this time stretch, it's probably got to be at the very beginning of it, right? Because otherwise, you send him down, you got to wait the 15 days, or somebody has an injury, and then you can do it.
That's the only way you can make it work. You have to keep him up for that 6 days if you want to do it that way.
And that's why, like, it's probably either going to have to be you do the 2 starts with the 6-man in this 13 games and 13-day stretch to start this out, and then you move to the 5-man afterwards, or you just do the 1 and then you move back to your typical 5-man rotation.
That's the choice. I think the first one is easy. You give it to McGreevy and then you move forward, right? Like, but then that decision point will come, and we don't have to get, like, we've got 6 days, 7 days until we get to this place. But whenever they get there, that's when you have an inflection point of, where's the bullpen at? How are we doing in that regard? Do we need to keep McGreevy around? And he can either cover a couple of innings out of the bullpen over the next, 5 days, or more likely, he's just sitting out in the bullpen for the next 5 days while he prepares for his next start, and then we're able to keep all of these guys on the rest that they've been able to do so far. We did get this text, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 618. Guys, it's already been malpractice that McGreevy hasn't been up here all along. He had major league success. He had minor league success. He's had a sub-2 ERA in spring, still didn't get a spot, and he had the great outing about a month ago as well. I think we're underselling the fact that there will be injuries. Somebody's almost certainly going to be hurt. And in that event, what do you do? Because if McGreevy is already a part of this rotation, who do you guys think would lose their spot?
Palante.
Who do you think people, let me ask this a different way. Who do you think people want to lose their spot right now?
Michaelis.
So,
which is unfair.
In that event, what are you doing with Michaelis? If you're saying, okay, McGreevy in, Michaelis out, what happens to Michaelis?
Let me see if I can channel my inner Cardinal fan.
DFA him!
That's pretty good.
So he's now gone. You've removed him from the roster. We set him aside, right? McGreevy takes his spot on the roster now. Somebody gets hurt. Now what?
Drew Rum.
Dude hasn't pitched in a year, but Drew Rum.
They don't have options, guys. They don't. And I'm not talking about, like, options to send guys up or down. They do have that. Palante could go down. If you want to send him down, cool, whatever. But, like, I don't think that's necessarily the smartest thing. Palante's a 4.5 ERA this season. He's been fine. He's been the definition of a number 5 starter. Could McGreevy be better? Maybe. Possibly. There's no guarantee of that. And Palante hasn't earned, like, the downside of going down to AAA. He hasn't been that bad. So you keep McGreevy down. You allow him to continue to get the seasoning. This is the way that pitching development, frankly, should work. You allow him the benefit of time. Work on stuff where people aren't going to lose their freaking minds if you end up giving up 5 runs the way that Liberatore did this weekend, for example. It's not the end of the world. Keep working on stuff. He has a better slider now than he did last year. Why? Because he's learning. He's able to get lefties out better than he was able to over the last couple of years. Why? Because he's incorporating new stuff into his arsenal. He continues to get better. So I don't think that is malpractice at all. In fact, I think they're going about this the right way, even though I also understand it's frustrating. It's really frustrating to see a young, quality arm down in AAA when you feel like you could utilize him at the big league level. I think the best way to do so is with the 6-man, one start, go back down, and then he comes back up whenever somebody gets hurt.
Yeah, and I think, and I said this at the beginning of the year, and I think it still holds true, even though there's not a spot for him. And I don't have any issues with the way they're handling McGreevy. It also buys the time to where if there was an injury, you don't rush Quinn Matthews, right? That's the guy, too, that they don't want to rush. You don't rush a Quinn Matthews or Tink Hintz, who's at AAA, and both those guys have dealt with injuries, so they're even behind in their development. So it is good to have a guy down there. You've got 5 starters. If you have to, okay, your 6th guy is Michael McGreevy. Honestly, if your 7th guy, it probably is Steven Matz, but I think Alex said it best. If you got to go to a 7th guy right now for the Cardinals, you're bleeped. I mean, that is just the fact of where they are at as an organization with their pitching depth.
Yeah, and they're operating that way. Have all year.
Yeah. Well, and unless you're the Dodgers, you're bleeped if you got to go to your 7th, 8th, or 9th guy.
Like they are. I don't get it. It's pixie dust.
Well, they just signed so many of them. You just got like 10 guys we just need you to be healthy for 2 months.
But they're like none of those guys are pitching for them right now. Yeah. Like they're pitching you, me, T-Bone, and Jackson. Yeah. Like that's their rotation, and it's working because I don't know.
Well, it's working because their offense is unbelievable.
I was going to say because they got Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah,
that's why it's working.
That's how it's had success.
Landon Knack is currently in their starting rotation.
He's got a knack for pitching.
I'm not sure he does. I watched his last start.
Well, he's got a knack for helping him in his small sample size.
Landon Knack is 27 years old, and he has a 4.6 ERA with a 5.1 fielding independent number this year.
I could be wrong. I think he's the one, like, you watch his starts, and it is like hard hit ball after a hard hit ball after a hard hit ball.
You remember Tony Gonsolin? He's the guy that you might be thinking of. Tony Gonsolin has been horrible this year. He's getting absolutely rocked. He has an ERA north of 5, which would be the worst in the Cardinals rotation right now. He is an every fifth day starter for them currently. Meanwhile, their injured list. Tyler Glasnow, River Ryan, Roki Sasaki, Emmett Sheehan, Blake Snell, Gavin Stone. Those are the names that most of our listenership right now knows. They're all on the IL. It's absurd. If you had one of those guys as the equivalent for the Cardinals would be in panic mode. Meanwhile, the Dodgers right now have 6 of them. It's just a strange place for Major League Baseball to be in. I think the worst thing in the world for baseball this year would be for that team to win the World Series. How could you as a fan base honest to God enter the 2026 season and say, yeah, our team has a chance, when that team, as currently constructed, is potentially going to win the World Series? Dude, that would be a terrible, terrible, terrible thing for baseball, and it would be the latest sign that they need a salary cap, and players won't admit as much.
Baseball would throw a different tune out and say, like, hey, they're going to bring us the most money possible in the World Series, so we're good.
Yeah, fans should revolt if that ends up happening. Coming up next, the Blues are running into the same issue as many other teams around the league. So what's the answer? We'll talk about that next year on BK and Ferrario.
Tanner Hendrickson here. The Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals fell to the Rangers yesterday as they dropped 2 of 3 in Arlington. They are off today as they travel home, where they'll start a 3-game set with the Kansas City Royals tomorrow night. 6:45 will be first pitch. Michael Lorenzen will be on the mound for KC. Andre Palante will get the start for St. Louis. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. SEMALondoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alex, I've seen like half of the league right now listing something to the effect of offseason needs. Number 2 center. Toronto is up there. Vancouver, I read a piece the other day about how they can acquire a middle 6 center for their team. I think Calgary might be looking for one this offseason. I think they said Ottawa maybe would be looking for one as well. No, Montreal, I think, was the team that might be looking for one as well. So I was reading a piece yesterday, and this was specifically about Toronto, but it applies for some of these other teams as well. This comes from Sportsnet. Quote, scour the league and you'll see finding a second-line center seems like an even taller task this offseason than it does usually. And quite frankly, if a plug-and-play option did become available, how would Toronto outbid other teams for that player's services? Toronto isn't exactly flush with prospects and doesn't have a first-rounder for the next 3 seasons. If Trey Living is indeed a fan of Tavares, as he stated on Thursday, he might want to cement that notion by extending the hometown boy in the next few weeks, because in this center market, getting Tavares at a bargain rate sure feels like the preferable route to going out and paying full boat for anybody else. That all comes from Sportsnet, and they were basically saying, hey, listen, you can look out there and you might feel as though there are better options. The reality is there's really not. Toronto is now looking and saying, okay, I guess we'll just do this again. And that's how I have felt as we've been discussing the potential options for the Blues this offseason to upgrade their second-line center over Braden Shin. Frankly, the Toronto Maple Leafs would love to have Braden Shin as their quote-unquote upgrade as their second-line center. They wanted it at the deadline. I would imagine they would still be more than happy to do so this offseason. Don't know that the Blues are quite as willing, and that's ultimately what matters. As you look around at some of the other playoff teams, Alex, these aren't necessarily Stanley Cup contenders, some of them, but the good teams nonetheless, teams that were in the postseason this year. The Lightning, when these teams ended the playoffs, here were their second and third line centers, just as context for what the good teams around the league are looking at right now. Lightning had Nick Paul and Anthony Cirelli. The Hurricanes, Kotkaniemi,
but you got it.
Copacabana. And Jordan Stahl. The Stars had Duchesne and Wyatt Johnson. The Avalanche had Brock Nelson and Charlie Coyle. And then the Kings had Quentin Byfield, who we love, and Philip Deneau. So that's just 5 examples of teams that were conceivably good. And I don't know how much better a lot of those second-line centers are than what the Blues currently have with Braden Shin. Alex, do the Blues actually have a second-line center problem, or does the NHL have a second-line center problem? Is this the NHL's version of number 2 starter?
Yeah, I think the NHL has a second-line center problem because, look through most of these. Cirelli is the number 2 for Tampa. He was drafted by Carolina. Kotkaniemi was acquired via offer sheet by the Carolina Hurricanes. Wyatt Johnson was drafted. Both Nelson and Coyle were acquired in trades. Quentin Byfield was drafted. A lot of these teams, their second-line center, just like their top center, is typically drafted by the organization. You don't find them via free agency or via trade when they're 29, 30 years old. It's earlier in their careers. It's why the long goal for the Blues is Dalibor Dvorsky as the number 2 center, but that's the long play. You got about 3-4 years away from your being in that territory. So it's kind of like you just need a placeholder. And as of now, if on the Blues, my placeholder is Braden Shen, and I'm looking to upgrade over Oscar Sundqvist because
Totally
Shen,
agree.
Kyrou, and Holloway was a really good second line. You go through some of those second lines that performed in the playoffs, like Carolina or Tampa's or even Colorado's, The Blues, win at full health, had one of the best second lines in the National Hockey League with Holloway, Schenn, and Kyrou. So I'm not trying to change much of that if I'm Doug Armstrong, but what I am looking for is I'm trying to capitalize on the market of saying I need a third-line center that has the potential of being a number 2 center. Because if I can find that, if I find my number 3 and he can play in that spot for me next year with a Neighbors and a Zach Bolduc, well, then that's gravy because Schenn's got one good year. But maybe if Schenn gets injured, or maybe in 2 years if Schenn's play starts to decline again, can that guy be a second-line center for me while Dvorsky's a third-line center and watch them kind of interchange? That's the goal, which I think it's a lot more easy to acquire a third-line center with an upgrade over Oscar Sundqvist than it is looking for an upgrade over Schenn.
I agree with that. I'm 100% with you. I think when you look at the market, there's not a number 2 guy out there. Or it's Bennett, but you're not going to give him that kind of
Brock
contract.
Nelson is a number 2. I think John Tavares is a number 2. Yeah. I think that's it.
Yeah, that's fair. I think those guys are there, but now you're talking about getting into a bidding war with those guys. And I just don't know how far the Blues are willing to go when it comes to that.
Well, and you're not a preferred destination for any of those 3 guys.
Yeah, so I think you're probably at the stage where it is you're going to have to settle for someone that you look at, you bring in. I agree with you, Schenn's probably your stopgap for that number 2 center spot, and you're looking to just upgrade over Oscar Sundqvist. This feels a lot like when, there's in baseball, hey, we need a number 2 starter. Okay, everybody needs a number 2 starter. There's only one guy on the market. So what happens is you end up settling for, we'll just get a really good player to ultimately go into our rotation. This is what it feels like for the Blues. I think it has become clear that they're going to need to upgrade that third-line center spot just because there's just limited options to go for that number 2.
Yeah, I think you're talking about either trading for somebody that is not super exciting. Alex brought up Waugh the other day from Vegas. And, Alex, you mentioned off-air that Elliot Friedman had talked about the Vegas Golden Knights as a potential trade destination, not necessarily for Waugh, but he brought up specifically defensemen for them with Nicholas Hague. Maybe the Blues could find a way to construct a bigger deal where you get both a defenseman that can help you on the right side and also a center in Waugh. But whether it's him or if it's another guy out there, you go to the market, you get Trent Frederick, who at first I was a little hesitant on, but the more that we talk about it, the more I keep coming back to, I understand the argument for something like that. Hell, even in this piece over on Sportsnet, I think it was Justin Bourne who said, I'd be open to, if the Maple Leafs decide to go a different direction, they want to replace Marner and Tavares in the aggregate, just pay a bunch of money for 4 different players instead of 2. It's well, Trent Frederick in that scenario makes a lot of sense for the Maple Leafs as a third-line center. He's young, he has point production in his past, and there's at least still some upside with the grit as well. I think the Blues are in a pretty good spot to be able to find that player. It's really hard to find the second-line center that is an obvious upgrade over Braden Shen, unless you go Bennett, who's going to get a boatload of money, and I'm not really comfortable with that, or one of Brock Nelson, who sure seems headed to Minnesota, or John Tavares, who I just don't know what his situation is going to be.
Yeah, well, and I guess the good news, if you want to look at it this way for the Blues, is all of these other teams that are desperate for a second-line center, they kind of have their blinders on to where they're not looking for the third-line center because they want the upgrade at the second-line center. I did have selective hearing when I was listening to Friedman because he mentioned Nick Hague, but I thought I heard Nicholas Waugh, which totally makes sense. But, I mean, the reports are out there. James Myrtle said that Vegas is a likely destination or a fit for Mitch Marner, and they'd have to shed salary. But the one thing that Friedman did mention is Ottawa. He said they're going to be looking to trade some of their right shot forwards. Now, he mentioned a ton of wingers, Perron, Batherson, Zetterlund, but, tinfoil with that one. It puts Pinto into the conversation because he's one away from RFA status. He's 24 center as their third-line center, and they just signed a dude who's younger to the same contract that Shane Pinto has for 5 years. So there's going to be some type of trade out there, but the point that you made from Sportsnet and about Toronto and them trying to go acquire that guy, they don't have the assets to go trade for one. They've got a second and third round pick in this year's draft. They don't have a first round pick for the next 3 years. So the Blues don't have second round picks, but they've got more prospects than what Toronto has. So are you willing to give something up to make your team better for the now, or do you just go to the market and sign something? That I think you find out later this week at the Combine when all of the rumors really pick up.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You can get involved in the YouTube chat as well, as always, at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Questions and answers coming up next. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, it's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for any of your questions. Coming up in about 10 minutes is Oli Marmol building a case not only to remain as the Cardinals manager, but to be in the conversation among the best managers in Major League Baseball. We'll do that conversation in about 10 minutes here on BK and Ferrario. All right, let's get to this. Alex, this one comes from the 314. Jordan Kyrou for Brandt Clark and Warren Fogle. Then you go sign Frederick. Discuss.
No.
Okay.
End of discussion.
I love Brandt Clark, and I think Brandt Clark would be an awesome addition. But you're trading Jordan Kyrou, who is, whether you think he is or not, he's a top 6 forward. A guy who can score 30 goals for a third liner, and Warren Fogle, who just had 24 goals for the LA Kings, and signing Trent Frederick, who's a third-line center. So you're getting 2 third-line players and a top 4 defenseman, and then you got a hole on your offense and your top 6.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. Guys, you mentioned doing a potential multiplayer package with Vegas. Any other teams come to mind that you could do that with for a center and a defender?
None that I can think of, because there's not a whole lot of defensemen that fit the profile of what the Blues are looking for / the guys are available.
Sure.
Because I really do like the idea of Shane Pinto also from Ottawa, but they don't really have a defenseman. I guess if you want to get crazy with it, you can go over to the Islanders because they do have Noah Dobson, who's a right-handed defenseman, who's an RFA, but I think he's going to be very expensive. And they've got the centerman that we've talked about, whether it's Pajot, Barzell. You can go to the Buffalo Sabres and get Byram, but who's the center you're going after? Because I don't think they really have a center. Yeah. So the hard part is trying to find 2 guys on one team that are cheap, because that's the other thing. You can't go out there and acquire 2 guys that are making $6+ million.
Can I do a crazy one for you?
Sure.
Let's get crazy.
McDavid and Bouchard.
He's got a no-move clause, so I think this would not work. But I also, I'm going to talk about a BK name. Nazem Kadri, if you wanted to do your Rasmus Anderson idea, Anderson and Kadri, that would be an interesting one. I mean, again, like 0% chance, but just to throw out names that we think are...
Hey, he can't run into Bennington on the team.
That's true. I mean, hey, whether you like him or not, he's a feisty player. So the hard part is there's just not a
productive for them too.
Whole lot of defensemen that are available that profile into that realm that you can afford. That's why the Hagen Wah or the White Cloud and Wah are so fascinating, because both guys are under $5 million if you were to acquire them. For the now, Haig is an RFA. He's going to get paid if you trade for that guy. But how much is he going to get paid? That's the real question.
How would you feel about that if the Blues acquired Anderson and Nazem Kadri? I mean, they're not going to, but in this event, just hypothetical.
I wouldn't like it for the price you'd have to pay, because Kadri's expensive and Rasmus Anderson's going to outbid himself from you keeping him. So you're basically making a move for the guy that's going to handcuff you moving forward, and another guy that's going to be gone after this season. Yeah. It makes you good next year, though.
Islanders are the team that you could potentially look at. Scott Mayfield, I don't think, had a very good year. He's got a no-trade clause.
He's a third-pair guy
here. But that's something you could potentially
New Jersey,
do.
I mean, I've brought up Simone Nemich's name. They've got Dawson Mercer, who's a third-line center, but that's like at best what he is. But it's going to cost you a lot because Nemich is a top-pair defenseman potential.
McLeod and Byram is like, if you want to get exciting, you want to get fun, you want to get young, that's a good one. And that's Buffalo for those that aren't familiar with the names. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. T-Bone, this is more in your lane. Does trading for Alcantara, now that his value is down, make sense? Hope that our defense and coaching can potentially fix him. Give my thoughts on this first. No interest in Sandy Alcantara this year. And here's the reason why. I don't think his value is actually down as much as you'd think. He's been horrible so far this year, and a lot of the time what you see is like 18 months post-surgery is when guys actually come back closer to healthy. So by the end of the season, the belief for a lot of organizations is he'll be closer to the former version of Sandy Alcantara. I think that guy is going to end up demanding more talent in return than what I would personally be comfortable giving up. If you want to go that route, this is way less exciting, but guy that I would be looking to target this year at the deadline would be Chris Bassett. The Toronto Blue Jays right now are technically in it, but they're quite a bit out of it in the division. We'll see if they're able to sustain this in the wild card. He would be the guy that I would look to do certainly before this other pitcher from the AL East.
Yeah, first off, I like Bassett as a name.
From the East, rather, not the AL.
I like Alcantara. Like, I would still take a swing on it. The way he's pitching, though, right now, I would not want to give up what I think Miami's asking for. I do find him fascinating come the trade deadline because, though, yes, he will get a haul still, it's not the haul that I think it would be if he was pitching like the ace that everybody expects him to be. So I wonder if Miami will consider holding on to him at the deadline. They did this with Jesus Luzardo a couple years ago where it was, okay, he might be one of the most attractive names on the market. And then he had like all kinds of back and shoulder issues, and they held on to him. And then they ended up selling him for cheap to the Philadelphia Phillies. And as we've seen, the Phillies have gotten a stud out of that deal. But I would have interest in him, but not at that price, probably, is the way I would frame it.
All right, from the 314, guys, what do you think about Ryan O'Reilly? Under $5 million a year, shouldn't cost more than much prospect-wise, and would seem to be an upgrade as the third-line center. I've mentioned this a number of times. Love it. Love it. If that's the direction that they decide to go, I would totally understand it. You've got familiarity there. Now, it's a different team. It's a different situation than it was when he left, and I hope everybody would be able to acknowledge as much. He's not coming in to be the captain. That's now Braden Shen's role, right? And I actually think that would probably be a good thing for O'Reilly at this point in his career, but I would love it. I think he would be a great fit there.
I'd love it, too. I think it's more expensive than people are really giving it credit for, because I don't think Nashville has any motivation to trade him. The reason they brought him in was to make the team better. Now, obviously, it wasn't last year, but 2 years ago, he was a pretty good piece for them. You'd have to make them want to trade Ryan O'Reilly, and I don't know if that's worth it.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Guys, Jordan Kyrou's not a playoff performer. That's why you got to trade him this offseason. Do you think the Blues would actually consider it? Nope.
Did you see that Merrick just had the report that apparently the Stars are considering trading Jason Robertson?
Really?
Yeah, because of his lack of performance in the playoffs. I do think at times now Dallas is in a much different situation than what the Blues are in, because Dallas is like cup contender and they're not getting it done. Robertson was hurt, but this is, I think, the third straight year where they've had those questions about Jason Robertson in the postseason. I mean, the only way I'm trading Jason Robertson or Jordan Kyrou, which, by the way, Robertson is a playoff performer if you look at his numbers, but Dallas, of course, is frustrated right now. The only way I'm trading a Kyrou is if I'm getting an upgrade over him. And the trade that they offered earlier, the Brandt Clark and Warren Fogle, and then go sign Trent Frederick, man, that is making yourself worse than making it better. If you can go get somebody that fills that top line role that is a more consistent performer, which I don't know how you're going to find that above 37 goals, so be it, man. But I think there's reasons that you can explain why Jordan Kyrou didn't perform in the playoffs.
Yeah, I wouldn't move Kyrou. I think he's on the non-touchable list for me. And that Robertson thing, like, that is Dallas still going through the grieving process. I would be shocked if they move him.
I mean, if you're them, like,
they got Rantanen, so I could see him trade Jason Robertson, because you have to pay him in a couple of years, and he's going to be expensive.
Like, the same thing of Kyrou, like, okay, I'm going to trade a 37 goal scorer. I've got to get something that is equal to or better than that. Is so hard to do. Same is said for Jason Robertson, right? That guy had 35 goals, was 80 points last year. Like, good luck. Oh, and by the way, he scored 46 and 41 his career at some point.
Yeah, but he's 7.75 this year, and then he's an RFA for 1 year, and then he's a UFA.
And he doesn't have any trade protection. And next year he probably will have some kind of a trade protection.
It's the same conversation we've been having about Kyrou, why you trade him.
So if you're going to make the move, now is the time that you have to do it. They've also been playing him at times on the third line as opposed to in their top six. So, like, he actually makes a lot more sense to me than Jordan Kyrou does. The other thing is, like, Duchesne is a free agent this offseason.
Yeah, and Jamie Benn.
So you've got some moves that you've got to be able to make for them. If you were able to trade Robertson and in return you get a couple of, like, middle six pieces that, like, to go back to it, in the aggregate are able to not only replace Robertson, but maybe even go above it. They really lacked depth once they got into the postseason. It's not just Robertson. Their depth of scoring was not good. Mikko Rantanen was a one-man wrecking crew for much of the playoffs. Granlund is gone this offseason potentially as well. They have got to find a way to replace some offensive production. I wouldn't necessarily condone trading Jason Robertson. But I've said this to you in the past, Alex. When I see the Blues play against the Stars, I don't feel his presence at all in these games. He's just kind of out there floating. So
he's a pure goal scorer. I
get it.
Puck's on his stick. He shoots. Like, if I'm them, I'd look to trade him to go get a legit top pair right-handed defenseman, because their weakness in the playoffs, on top of the lack of depth, was your defense was bad in front of Jake Ottinger.
That to me felt more like, the injuries caught up with them.
Maybe, but it was very evident beyond Heiskanen and Lindell, who both were hurt, like they didn't have much. And if you're them,
Harley is a good player.
Yeah, Harley. If you're all of these guys too, by the way, are left-handed defensemen, so like they're very short on their right side.
Heiskanen played right though.
They'd prefer him on the left. It's the better shot for him. But yeah, he can play the right.
Well, that sounds familiar.
They can replace Jason Robertson with Mikko Rantanen. They are replacing Jason Robertson with Mikko Rantanen if you trade him. But then you're looking for depth, and then now you're back to the same problem.
All right, he's Alex Estebon on BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, can the Cardinals get better in June than they were in May? It's a comment that Oli made yesterday. We'll talk about that coming up in about 15 minutes and how they can do so. But next, there was a great quote from John Mozeliak yesterday. He does his weekly hits with KMOX on Sundays. He was asked about Oli Marmol and the job that he has done as a manager for the Cardinals. You're going to hear this next year on 101 ESPN. John Mozeliak was just on MLB Network. We'll have that audio for you by the end of the show today here on BK and Ferrario with Alex and T-Bone on BK. Mo was also on with KMOX yesterday, and he was asked about Oli Marmol and the performance that his manager has had so far this season. This was an unexpected good start for the Cardinals. Here's what John Mozeliak had to say about everybody's favorite manager, Oli Marmol.
Well, needless to say, I'm a big advocate of Oli, big supporter of him. I feel like a lot of people don't really give him a fair shake for a variety of reasons. When you think back to, our time here in the last 3 decades with somebody like a Tony La Russa, then we transitioned to Mike Matheny, and then Mike Schilt, and now Oli. It's kind of incredible that we've only had 4 managers in that time. And, I really feel like Oli's just an emerging star. I think he understands the game. I think players like playing for him. He runs a really good clubhouse. I think from a in-game strategy standpoint, he understands. I mean, there's certainly times where he makes decisions and it doesn't work. But let me tell you, anybody that has to do that job, you're always being looked at. It's hard. It's tough. And I think he has the personality to really handle it. And I think he does a great job with it.
It was also noteworthy to me over the weekend, Bernie Miklasz, who has as much of a Rolodex on recent Cardinals memory as anybody in this market, wrote that he thinks Oli Marmol has the chance to be a star manager in Major League Baseball. Now, the threshold for a star manager nowadays is different than it was 25, 30 years ago, right? Those guys were household names. And now today, who would you say is the biggest star manager? Is it Dave Roberts?
Dave Roberts or
Alex Cora?
Craig Counsell, Alex Cora. Those would be the 3.
Kevin
Aaron
Cash?
Boone, maybe.
Aaron Boone? Yeah. And those guys are they're good managers. I like them all, but
I just don't know how you label a manager a star. I don't know how a guy, unless you're winning World Series after World Series after World Series.
The Cubs won the press conference last year with Craig Counsell, and then how'd that go for him? I think he's a good manager.
Too.
They're good today.
You need the players. Ultimately, it comes down to the players. So I liked what Mo had to say about Oli yesterday. I also find it interesting, Alex. Is he building a case to remain within the Cardinals organization, just not in any role, but as the manager? Because this was a big topic of conversation coming into the year, man. He was aware of it. Oli was. Mo was certainly aware of it. Everybody was. It's a 1-year trial period for everybody involved before Chaim Bloom takes over as the Cardinals president of baseball operations. It's been reported Oli has regular meetings. I think it's weekly meetings with Chaim Bloom talking about kind of his process, what the minor league system looks like. And he's done a good job with the big league club. Do you think so far, it's early, it's only early June, has he shown you a decent amount to the point where you think he's probably going to remain as the Cardinals manager?
I think so. I know a lot of people don't like Oli, as Mo kind of pointed out there, but it's hard to argue against another manager coming in without knowing what Chaim Bloom's realistic expectations are of what he wants from the manager. But just going off of the evidence you have and the measurements in front of you, he took a team that had no expectations, that you were trying to give runway with all of these younger players. And not only are they performing, but they're performing with flying colors. That's the way that you would label a manager and say, hey, how do we decide to keep this guy around? Well, he got the best out of a group of guys that we didn't believe were going to get us into the playoffs. They got us into the playoffs if the Cardinals make it, or at least you're right there. How do you veer away from that guy? Especially if, we've talked about the managers that are out there, with the exception of people saying, well, give me Pujols or Yadier Molina. There's no managers that you sit there and say, well, that guy would make this team significantly better than Oli, especially with what we have in front of us right now. If you end the season with multiple guys potentially as all-stars, like Brendan Donovan or Ivan Herrera, you've got Mason Wynn performing, Victor Scott performing, with the exception of Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman, who all of the expectations were around. How do you look at what Oli has done with those players this season and say, didn't get the best out of him, we got to go get a different manager?
That's the thing. What's the goal of a coach, right? It's to get the most out of whatever your talent is that is available. And that means different things for different teams. There are some teams that came into the season knowing, hey, man, we can extract every ounce of juice from this lemon, and we're going to win 75 games. If we don't, we'll win 55. That is our range of outcomes for this season. The Cardinals, at least thus far, and this can change. We are, again, in early June. Who knows what comes from here until the end of the season? We've got 2.5 months of regular season before we get to the end of this thing. So far, they've extracted about as much as you possibly can from this talent, this core group of individuals. I think you said it right. Like, Gorman, to me, is the only one that's really underperforming. Even with Walker, right before he got injured, there were legitimate signs of life with his bat. Alec Burleson, rough start, great ever since. Wilson Contreras, rough start, got really hot, little bit sluggish lately, but has shown some more progress again. I mean, there are very few players on this team right now that I would say are underperforming relative to our expectations coming into the season. I could probably name all of them on one hand, the number of players that are doing that. And so that should be, in my opinion, a reflection of the manager. If your team stinks and the expectation was, man, you've got so many good players, how is this going so poorly? That is, at least in part, a reflection on the manager or the coaching staff in general. I think Ollie's done a good job of picking his coaches. He found Dusty Blake, the organization did, but Ollie wanted him apparently. And it seems like Dusty Blake is a good pitching coach. It was a risky hire, man. This guy came from college, and it's working right now. They did a really good job in finding the next hitting coach, handpicked by the organization with referrals. I think they did a really good job in finding not one but multiple bench coaches. I think that might be Ollie's greatest asset, is when he gets a guy that actually wants to do the job and sticks around for the full year. He's done a pretty good job of finding legit, like, future managerial candidate bench coaches, first with Skip Schumacher, now with Daniel Descalso for a brief period of time there during an offseason, Matt Holliday as well. I think he's worthy. If this thing goes totally nosediving by the end of the season, yeah, it could change. But right now, I think my current expectation is that Ollie will be the first manager for Chaim Bloom here in St. Louis.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think when you talk about a manager, look, they can say, and they said it publicly this year, hey, our goal is more about development than it is winning. Hey, man, the manager's job is to win ultimately, right? Like, we can talk about development. I do think a big part of for Chaim Bloom was, okay, what does the record look like for this Cardinals team? And part of that does come down to their development. But to Ollie's credit, man, like, not only are they giving runway to guys, they're giving runway to them, they're developing these guys on the fly at the big league level, they're winning. And I think his most impressive work, I think there's a chance this year will go down as maybe his most impressive work so far in his first 4 years here. Last year was impressive as hell because, I mean, they finished above 500 for a team that, if you look at like the Pythag win stuff, which is basically what was your run differential, and that should tell you what your record was. Last year, they should have been 76 and 86, according to Pythag. They ended up 4 games above 500 at 83 and 79.
And as an Oli Marmol critic would probably say, a lot of that is because the bullpen was so great, right? Like, when you're winning these close games, it's not just the manager. It's also the fact that he's got the players in place to be able to close those games out. Skip Schumacher said that. Skip, we think, is a good manager. His success in Miami was due to a good bullpen in those close games. So if I'm going to give that credit to Skip, and I would, I think he's going to be a good manager wherever he goes next, I will also have to give that same amount of credit to Oli Marmol.
And my counter to that would be, okay, sure, show me a good bullpen. You probably are good in one-run games, and you are a team maybe that is above 500. You also got to keep that bullpen fresh all year long. And I think Mo has said it at times. I know Birdie mentioned it in his piece, and I totally agree with it. I think Ollie's great at managing a bullpen. I think there are times where I've been critical of some decisions at times in a game. That's going to happen. It's baseball. But the way that he handles a bullpen for a full 162 games is really impressive, because it's one thing to go to the same guys and be fearful of wearing them down. He does a good job of making sure that when they start the season, they start to sprinkle in guys. That way they have more reinforcements to take over high-leverage spots. Looking at Kyle Leahy, for example, they've been able to take him from a guy that made it as a long reliever that was stretched out as a starter that none of us had expectations for, to, okay, we like this stuff, let's sprinkle it in a little bit higher leverage. And then now you look at him, and though he's had a little bit of a weird week, he's their 8th inning guy. And that's impressive to find that guy in season.
You know what's funny? I actually, kind of ironic at least, I actually think Ollie would be an excellent manager for a legitimate contender. I'm talking about a team that's like loaded with talent. And the reason why is because some of my biggest frustrations with Ollie at times are the way that he approaches the early portion of the season, right? And he's doing this for a reason. It's worked this year. The entire goal of April was to get the starters and the relievers to now healthy. You wanted all of them to be available today, because if they weren't, dude, this team would have been screwed, right? So he was finding out what is the best way to do that. And it's with rest, it's with 6-man rotations, it's by churning through the bullpen, all of these different things. And sometimes that means you're sacrificing a game in early April for the ability to have those guys in June. And that's frustrating when you're watching it in the moment. I have to admit as much, because I criticized him for doing so in April. If you're a great team, though, and the replacements are really good when you're doing stuff like that to keep them healthy for like June, July, August, dude, then it looks amazing. You come out smelling like roses because you're not necessarily sacrificing those games in early April because your depth is not what the current Cardinals' depth is. It's better because you're a better team. So I actually think Oli right now, strange enough, this might be like the quote-unquote worst version of him as a manager because you're seeing some of the things that he does really well, they almost get exposed in the early portion of the season, whereas when you start to develop more talent, I think they will become more of a draw as opposed to the flaw.
It's part of the reason why I just don't understand. Like, I understand why people say, well, no, I want Albert Pujols or Yadier Molina because they're or Skip Schumacher because they're Cardinals legends, and that's what you want. Cardinals fans want their own guys.
Sure.
But I also look at what he's doing now, and this is honestly the worst version of a roster that he has had since he's been a part of the team. Like, the Cardinals had the big bats that were supposed to be the dangerous threats. They had the pitchers that they were going for. They were always short in one area, and everything fell flat. Now, he's performing with an offense that wasn't supposed to be doing any damage. He's performing with a pitching staff that every single person that was watching this Cardinals team had questions about, and your bullpen, frankly, isn't as strong as it's been in the past. And he's passing with all of these situations. Now, a lot of this falls on, do you believe the Cardinals organization are going to spend money to make the team more of a contender with depth from top to bottom? If you believe that they will and go by what they've said of resetting the books and adding more as the team starts to evolve, Oli might be the best option because he's winning with these pieces now that are only going to get reinforcements down the road.
We got this from the 314. Guys, they had to send Siani to AAA just so Oli wouldn't be tempted to use him. Sure did. You know what that happened with? Tony La Russa. The management team would have to either trade guys away or send them down so that way he didn't use them. Same thing was true for Mike Matheny. And I know people didn't exactly love Mike Matheny, but Lisa says, we want a proven winner. Here's the thing. You can't become that guy until you're given the opportunity to do so, right? There's no, like, as a manager, Albert Pujols is not a proven winner. As a manager, Yadier Molina is not a proven winner. As a manager, Skip Schumacher is not a proven winner. Just the truth.
Yeah.
Oli Marmol is also not a proven winner. If you want that guy, he's probably 60-plus years old. He's probably been in Major League Baseball for a really long time.
You want Bruce Bochy or you want Joe Madden.
Exactly.
That's what you want.
And so, like, if you want that guy and you would advocate for that signing, I'm not here to necessarily argue one way or the other. I'm just saying those guys are few and far between in the sports today because most of them are currently either managing or retired. Those stars of yesteryear in the managerial role, dude, they're going the way of the dinosaur. They just don't exist nowadays. So I think Oli is a good manager. I've been staunch on that basically since day one. I was open to the idea of him being a good manager. Now I do think he is a good manager. And Oli had some of the numbers on the first 4 years under Tony versus the first 4 years under Oli. Oli's been better in his first 4 years, just statistically speaking, than Tony La Russa was in his first 4 years here. Tony then went on to do a hell of a lot of winning. And he was a great manager, and he was also semi-proven when he got this job in St. Louis as opposed to Oli, who had never been a manager at this level before. I think he's earning his stripes, and I think what we have seen from him so far this year and what we saw from him in 2022, you put those two seasons together, I think he's shown this guy is more than capable of managing a contender in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, and I think to the, like Lisa saying, hey, we want a proven winner, like that kind of story maybe changes if he wins that playoff series against the Phillies. Now, maybe there's still a portion of the fan base that says, well, he didn't get to a World Series. Look, there's been multiple times, and there's been times this year, like when they went up against the Phillies, I was in the studio doing the show with UBK, and I said, I think Marmol's playing checkers while Thompson's playing chess right now. I do think when he has a roster that he can really manage, he does a good job with managing the bullpen, and then also with pinch hitting situations. I thought he was excellent with that in 2022. He just hasn't had the roster to do that, right? Like, I respect what he tried to do over the weekend, yesterday, in the game where it was, hey, Sean Armstrong stinks against lefties. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to pinch hit with our lefty off the bench. The problem for him is he just doesn't have a good enough lefty off the bench right now, right? Like, everybody, like the numbers would tell you it was the right decision to go to Nolan Gorman there. Nobody felt good about that at bat.
Sure.
Like, when he has the pieces, to your point on, like, hey, if he was in a spot where he was with a contender, I do think he would be able to manage those pieces and really do a good job tactically when it comes to managing what we're going to do with pinch hitters, what we're going to do to our bullpen. I think he would be very good at that. He just doesn't have the postseason success because he hasn't had the roster the last 2 years. And then in 2022, it was such a small sample size. I know nobody likes hearing that, but it was just too small of a sample size, right? Anybody can win a best-of-3 series.
Sure.
And that's exactly what it just came down to. He maybe pulled Quintana a little early.
Outmanaged a little bit in that series. That's okay. We can admit as much. We can acknowledge flaws while also saying, I think the guy is a good manager.
And I'll say this too.
Kevin Cash got outmanaged in a series.
Yeah, I like that you can kind of follow the evolution of Oli, right? And like the number one thing that sticks out to me on that is, remember when he started, when was Ryan Helsley deployed? He was their closer. He would be deployed in like the 7th inning when the top of the lineup was coming up. But he realized, hey, I've talked with my player. Best thing for the player is he wants to know what his role is. All right, so we're going to go back to the traditional, that is the 9th inning closer. Helsley will not pitch in the 8th. He will not pitch in the 7th if it's high leverage. He will pitch in the 9th inning for a save. Mason Wynn likes hitting at the top of the order. Okay, well, I'm going to put him in the 2 spot. Even if some loser named T-Bone hates the idea, I'm going to put him in the 2 spot, and he's had success in that. He has a very good feel for what guys need to do. He's evolved as manager because this whole like 6-man rotation in April wasn't a thing in the first 2 years of Oli Marmol, right? The focus on we need to be very good defensively.
Because of the players, too. Like, I think there were veterans on that rotation that did not want to go to a 6-man rotation. Yeah. He may have wanted to go there. I think he mentioned as much publicly. But if you listen to your players, to your point on this, and they say, we don't want this. We don't want the extra rest. We like our routine the way that it is. You've got to go along with it.
And you focus on that 2023 season. What did he learn from that year? Hey, we cannot be throwing out a Juan Yepes in a corner with an Alec Burleson in a corner, right? We have to be better sound defensively. Maybe we don't end up with a 90, 95 win team. We're not 20 games below 500 if we are somewhat good defensively. I like the fact that you can kind of follow the evolution of Oli Marmol and see what he's learning as he grows in this role.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. One other thing on this from the 314, guys, Ollie's overall record is 12 games above 500. He's 274 and 262. I think I would take my chances with one of Albert or Yachty. The same thing could have been said in the late 90s about Tony La Russa. Again, Bernie Miklas has this in his piece right now up on the St. Louis Sports Hub website. By the end of his 4th season as St. Louis manager, TLR had a .493 winning percentage. Let me read that one more time. By the end of his 4th season as the St. Louis Cardinals manager, Tony La Russa had a .493 winning percentage. That winning percentage is not reflective of who Tony La Russa was or is as a manager. He's an all-timer. He's a Hall of Famer. And he's a Red Jacket member for a reason. He got time, they got the players, and he ended up becoming a manager that won at the highest possible level. Not once, but twice here in St. Louis. I don't know if Oli will ever have those players to be able to do that. I do believe that if he gets those players, he's capable of going on those kinds of a run. And that's ultimately what the question should be when you're hiring or firing a manager. Can this guy do this? I think right now my answer to that on Oli Marmol is yes, and I think this season has been a big part of that. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Oli had a comment yesterday after the game that I did find to be interesting. Can the Cardinals be better in June than they were in May? And do they need to be for this team to be in position to be a contender at the deadline? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
we said it since spring training. We want to be better in May than we were in April and better in June. And that's by just focusing on the little things. We're head down, making sure that these guys are continuing to get better in different areas today. I mean, the base running was very good, and we need to continue that. But we're focused on little details of the game. They're taking ownership over it, and we're going to continue to do that.
That was Oli Marmol over the weekend talking about how the Cardinals can be better in June than they were in May. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, I'm not sure how possible that is. I mean, you look up and down this lineup. Alec Burleson finished the month of May with a 300 average and a 900 OPS. Brendan Donovan hit 325 this month. Ivan Herrera, 318, and that was with him cooling off for the last 10 days or so. Mason Wynn was a 300 hitter this month. Wilson Contreras had an OPS nearing 800. The offense was really good, and that is to say nothing of what the pitching staff was able to do. The results, well, they were outstanding. You came into the month of May, and overall, your team record was 14-17. You're now leaving this month, and you're 33-26, 7 games above 500. So Oli says what I think is a totally fair mantra for the team. You want to continue to get better over the course of the season. You've got this young team. Let's have linear progression throughout, right? I also think that was not necessarily expecting them to do what they just did in the month of May. Do you think they can get better? Like, is there still more for this team to give?
I mean, yes, but the area that we're asking for them to give more in is an area that I just don't know if they have it in their team, and that's slug and power. Like, that's really where it's coming from. Like, you look at everything offensively, top 5 in batting average, top 10 in on base and slug. Like, to say, like, you want to get better, of course you want to get better. I don't know how realistic that is, though. I mean, you do have, I don't want to say an easy schedule in the month of June, but you have teams that are lower in the standings than what you did in the previous month, where you went up against, you know, the the Diamondbacks, the Detroit Tigers, the Philadelphia Phillies multiple times. And now you're talking about Toronto, Milwaukee, the White Sox, Cincinnati. So, yes, I think you can improve. To me, though, like, I look at this and I would say, if I'm looking at my roster, just do what you just did in the previous month. Because if you can do that, we're going to be fine for the rest of the way, because you're outperforming anything that we expected in this one. The pitching you hope can maintain. The offense you hope can maintain, if not add a little bit more, whether it's real slug or manufactured slug. And then you want the defense to stay the same.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Alex. I don't know if they can improve more beyond this. And that is not a shot to say things are going to fall apart.
They're the best team in baseball in the month of May, so it's all right.
I think, like, asking for more, like, I just don't know where that comes from. Sure, I agree. They need more slug. And really, when I say that, I mean more just like, hey, it'd be cool if we hit the ball over the fence a little bit more. I don't think they've got that in them, though. Like, I don't know who I'm looking at right now on the roster saying, hey, that guy really needs to pick it up. Maybe Contreras. Maybe Herrera, but, like, I can't ask for it. He hit like 350 last month. So, and you look at what they did last month. They had 4 guys that are regulars in their lineup right now with OPSs over 800, and 5 that were over 780 when you throw in Contreras. Like, the only guy that was cold for the entire month that were regulars were Nolan Arenado, and, like, I don't know what to expect from him at this point in his career. And then Lars Nootbaar just went through a really tough, like, 3-week stretch there. I don't think you can ask for much more from this team. I think you've already seen, and I don't think this is a bad thing, I think you just saw, like, what the ceiling is of the 2025 Cardinals in the month of May.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Looked awesome to me. I mean, you go back and even against the contenders, they were right there against the Tigers. Probably should have won 2 out of 3 against them. You took a series against Philadelphia. You took a series against Arizona, swept them. Now, that's not a great Arizona team, and I don't know if you saw, but Corbin Burns was taken out of his most recent start. Looks like he's going to have some kind of an elbow or forearm inflammation issue.
Baltimore knew all along.
Arizona might be this year's blow-it-up team. That's something to kind of put a pin in.
I love Ketel Marte. I do love Ketel Marte.
He's got term.
We got Brendan Donovan.
Donovan's an outfielder.
Like Zach Gallen, wonder what's going to happen with him. They've got some interesting pitchers that could end up hitting the market for sure. But you look back and, man, they won 2 out of 3 against the New York Mets. If that is the team that you're going to get, if that's the ceiling, and the rest of the way it's just kind of a fluctuation between what it was in April and what it was in May, somewhere in between, you could finish the season, 10 games above 500. Feeling pretty good about where you're at. That's an 86-win team potentially. So this month, I heard Katie talking about this on our podcast yesterday. She asked, hey, if the Cardinals were to just finish at 500 in the month of May, in the month of June, would you feel good about that? My answer is yes. You leave June 7 games above 500. and you enter the month of July coming off of like one more day off the entire rest of the month. Your depth has been tested. You're going to have a series against the Dodgers. You're going to have a series against the Cubs, a big series against the Cubs coming up. Yeah, if you go about 500 this month, I think you'd, in your heart of hearts, have to feel pretty good about that leading into the All-Star break.
Big picture, I think you're absolutely right. But, man, I think I'd feel a little down about that because, like, it feels like you should win a majority of these series in this month. And maybe I'm just not giving enough credit to some of these teams, but like I feel like you should win a series against the Brewers. I feel like you should definitely win a series against the White Sox and the Royals, the Cincinnati Reds. And now we're talking about the Guardians, the Dodgers, the Blue Jays, and the Cubs. And if you want to be in the playoffs, you're going to have to win that series against the Cubs. And now we're down to, I think you're better than the Toronto Blue Jays who have a -5 run differential. So I understand what you're saying. Like, big picture, 7 games above 500 going into July. Man, that's awesome for a team that I didn't expect to be in that position. But after what I witnessed last month, I kind of feel like that would be a little bit of a disappointment if you only go 500.
Understood. I'm going to read you a few of the series losses that the Dodgers have had this year, because like weird stuff just happens in baseball, right? The Dodgers lost a series this year against the Nationals. That happened. Oh. The Dodgers were swept this season by the Los Angeles Angels. Ooh. And then against the Diamondbacks, the next series after getting swept by the Angels, lost game 1 against Arizona, had to go into extras in game 2, and then did end up winning in game 3. So they won 2 out of 3, but it was a really close series between those two teams. Like, weird stuff happens. If you end up losing some of those series that Alex just mentioned, it will feel frustrating. And I guarantee you, we'll come on the air the next day and we'll overreact because that's what we do, right? We watch these games with you guys. We're going through the highs and the lows of the season.
Overreact.
But when you get to the end of this month, if they end up being 500, and I'll hold myself to this because we're talking about it right now, if they're 7 games above 500 when they enter that first of July, when they're taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates and they'll have 3 series left prior to the All-Star break, I think all of us in our heart of hearts will have to feel pretty good about that because they'll put themselves into position to be buyers once we get to the trade deadline. And ultimately, that should be what all of the first 4 months of the season are about. Put yourself into position to make Mo's job difficult, to make him have to go out there and acquire talent instead of selling from the team.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up, long as you play 500 baseball, you should probably still be in this thing. Because I look at the standings, I don't see the teams that are ahead of you that are going to go on. Like, maybe somebody does. Not all 7 are going to go on a tear, right? Yeah. Not all 6 teams in front of you are going to go on a tear, and a 500 month means you're looking up at them and you're 5 games back and you become sellers suddenly. You play 500, slightly above 500 baseball in the month of June, you're going to be right in this thing. Maybe you're not in a playoffs, but you're going to be right there. And that's all you can ask for them to, like what you said, make Mo's job hard.
Yeah, that should be the goal. For the players, for the coaches, the goal should be, let's make this as difficult as possible for John Mozeliak. Coming up next, was Robert Thomas snubbed from Selke consideration? I got to be honest with you guys. Full disclosure, I made Alex very upset with my comments on this earlier today, so we'll get into it next here on PK and Ferrario.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals fell to the Rangers yesterday 8-1 as they dropped 2 of 3 in Arlington. They are off today as they travel back home, where they'll start a 3-game set with the Kansas City Royals tomorrow night. 6:45 will be first pitch. Michael Lorenzen will be on the mound for KC. Andre Palante will get the start for St. Louis. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, with Alex and T-Bone on BK, earlier today, Alex got big mad at me. I understand it. I probably had some tone, so I will try to reel that in as we talk about the Selke Trophy voting. Alexander Barkov, no surprise, was the winner of the Selke Trophy this year. The Florida Panthers center. He has the name recognition. He is an excellent hockey player. He ended up winning with 96 first-place votes. In second place on this was Sam Reinhart. He had 29 first place votes. He was tied in that regard with Anthony Cirelli, who ended up in third place for this year's Selke voting. So it was Barkov, Reinhart, Cirelli. Those were the top 3, and then Nico Hischier and Jack Eichel. If you want to continue down this list, I do think it is interesting that Dylan Holloway ended up at 26th. He did get a couple of votes in this regard. You keep going down the list even further. Jordan Kyrou got a 5th place vote. So congratulations to him for finishing tied for 37th in Selke Trophy consideration this year. But really, the place that I think most people are going to be looking at is Robert Thomas finished in 21st. He got 1 third place vote, 1 4th place vote, and a couple of 5th place votes. So did pretty well for himself in that regard. Alex, you said in our pre-show meeting, you've got a rant about this. What is your rant about in regards to the Selke Trophy voting this year?
My rant was mostly, I could make a strong argument that Robert Thomas should have been top 10, maybe top 5 in this conversation. The rant wasn't based off of beating Barkov for the trophy. I know how this thing works. You win it once, you're going to be in the top 3 every single year. You're more than likely going to win it. If you don't believe me, go look at how many times Kopitar won it consecutively, just like Pavel Datsyuk. And Barkov's an incredible player. But when I look at where Robert Thomas has affected the games this season, in 70 games played, he was better than all 5 of the top 5 in the votes in terms of even strength goals allowed, even strength goal differentials, played more minutes at even strength for the Blues, and had just as many minutes played at shorthanded time as Barkov, Reinhart, Cirelli, Hischier, and Jack Eichel. So my rant was more looking at Robert Thomas's play this season as a number 1 centerman, playing almost 19 minutes a night against the other team's best players, and at 5-on-5 in the regular season, allowed a total of 38 even strength goals. And I know plus minus isn't everything, so I'm not basing it off of that, but he was a plus 20 in the regular season in 70 games played. And remember, you get a minus when you're on the ice for allowing an empty net goal when you have the goalie pulled, and that was a big problem for the Blues. So when I saw this vote, it just gets frustrating because you see the names that are up there, the Barkovs, the Cirellis, the Jack Eichels, the Leo Draisaitl's, the Kopitars, and the Adam Lowrys. These guys have been in the top 10 a lot, and this is how the voting goes. I get it. Robert Thomas had a strong case, should have been top 10 in my opinion, and I think could have been a big argument to be top 5 in that conversation.
So that's where I think this gets really difficult, is you only rank your top 5. This isn't a situation where, like, people are ranking their top 10 and you then are like, people aren't putting together a top 37 of their Selke Trophy candidates this year, right? Like, somebody had, I don't know how they came to this conclusion, but somebody had to put on their ballot Jordan Kyrou was 5th in order for him to finish 37th. So you get to list 5 names. And the only way that you end up moving up this list is if more people put you into their top 5. For me, and I can only speak for myself, Robert Thomas was not a top 5 forward this year defensively in the NHL. I think he was awesome. He was a really, really good player. But there was about a month, and this is not his fault, I think he was still hurt. He was coming back from that injury. There was about a month where he didn't look like himself. The results were not as good as they were previously. And frankly, to start the year, that it wasn't all that, like, I don't think this was the season where Thomas took that step into Selke consideration for me. If I had a ballot, and listen, I'm not watching all of these guys every night, but I watch the Blues for every game, and I did not feel like his play lived up to that level. Meanwhile, you look at like Alexander Barkov, and this is the other thing that's really tough with this. Like, how can you tell who is the best defensive forward? Plus, minus, sure, you can use that, but it's also an evaluation of the entire unit that is on the ice, right? Like, we saw Cam Fowler. Cam Fowler's a good defensive player, right? We agree with that? Cam Fowler's plus minus was horrific when he was with the Anaheim Ducks. That was not representative of him. That was representative of his team. So Robert Thomas, while he was on the ice, was also on the ice, generally speaking, with very good players, and the team was good around. Like, it's hard to evaluate that 1-for-1 with just plus minus. It's like an ERA for a pitcher, right? It can be misleading when a guy has the worst defense in Major League Baseball behind him compared to the guy that has the best defense in Major League Baseball behind him. But you go to some of the underlying numbers, Barkov was amazing this year. By the one that I use, JFresh, he was the best defensive player in the NHL in 2025. So I'm cool with that. It's a really difficult award to ultimately come to a conclusion for, but if I had a ballot, I wouldn't have had Robert Thomas in my top 5 either.
Yeah, I would have. I think he was better than what Nico Hischier was defensively. He was better than what Jack Eichel was defensively. He's the go-to guy in almost every scenario. I would have him up there. I agree that the line has a lot to do with it, and Robert Thomas went through a lot of different players. A couple of people over on the YouTube chat, though, are bringing up, he was out for a month. Yeah, Barkov only played 67 games. Like,
my thing is not the month that a few weeks that he missed. It's more when he came back, he was not the same player.
Yeah, and injuries determine that. But I also look at what he did. That's even more of the case of what I could make for it, which for the time that he was there and he was healthy, and even not 100% healthy, he was the most dominant player on the team, and he's the one that changed it for them. So I understand it's an endless argument. I know how the Selke Trophy voting goes. It's just hard to look at it and say last year he played 82 games and had 86 points, and this year, with the exception of one bad month, and he missed almost a month, he also put up 82 points in 70 games played.
Those are all offensive numbers.
He made significant
considered for this.
He made significant improvement from what he did last year to this year, and last year we were arguing he should be in the Selke Trophy conversation.
Yeah, conversation, and I'm cool with that again this year. He was in the conversation. He was in the conversation about the same as he was a year ago.
My conversation isn't where he's at. The conversation should be he should be top 10, if not top 5.
But one of the main arguments that you would use for him, right, is the plus minus?
No, it would be even strength goal differential. How many
plus minus? Plus minus is your even strength goal differential.
Sure, but he allowed 38 even strength goals when he was on the ice, playing 18 and a half minutes average per night.
Totally, and that's plus minus.
That's not all the plus minus, though. Like, plus minus puts into consideration with the goaltender pulled, plus minus puts into consideration shorthanded goals. Plus minus is not just even strength.
It is, for the most part, other than basically your goalie pulled. But, like, Kyrou was a plus 23 this year. Dylan Holloway was a plus 21 this year. And this is why I bring it up, is because, like, he was not the only one with a really high level of plus minus. Zach Bolduc was a plus 20 for the Blues this year. I would not put those guys in the conversation of Selke Trophy consideration just because their plus minus was really high. I want to make this very clear. I'm not suggesting that those guys are the defenders that Robert Thomas is as the starting point. But this is where I think these kinds of awards are really tricky. And we've talked about this in the past with Curbs as well when it comes to the Norris Trophy consideration. When you're not watching every one of these teams every night, and I can't speak for you, Alex, I can't speak for you, T-Bone, or anybody else, but I'm not watching all of these other teams every night. I have a really difficult time stacking up Robert Thomas one-to-one against these other guys without then going to places like Jay Fresh's numbers, which are advanced numbers similar to like Baseball Savant, for example, and then seeing Thomas just does not stack up against those guys in those other underlying numbers. I think he's a really good player, and when I watch him regularly with the Blues, that's a great defender, and I think he's got a chance to maybe win a Selke Trophy down the line. But to me, the plus 20 and the plus minus, and not having a great 6-week stretch basically and missing time due to injury, I don't think he would not have been in consideration for me this year in Selke Trophy nominees.
Yeah, I disagree with that one. I understand where you're coming from. I watching him, I see the difference that he makes on the ice because he does go out there on a game-to-game basis and eliminate the other team's top line. Even when he had that bad month, it's still a guy that's relied on in every scenario, and it's a guy that finds ways to eliminate the other team's top lines. And that, to me, is how you judge the number one centerman or a defensive player, and it's not just plus-minus. I'm using that as part of the argument, not the whole argument.
Sure. All right, he's Alex's T-Bone on BK. Juncture coming up next year on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. All right, let's dive into the junk drawer. T-Bone, what do you got for us today?
Guys, I want to ask you if this new AI, which is coming to a business near you, would make your experience at this place
You love AI.
a little better. You know, I find myself really enjoying ChatGPT.
You use it a lot?
Yeah. Sometimes in ways I wasn't
What's the biggest thing you use it for?
I'll look up like recipes on there, like for cooking.
Sure.
I'll look up stuff like that. Sometimes I have questions that lead me down a rabbit hole that I end up not getting answers on. But, you know, me and Chad are trying.
I have seen people use ChatGPT by just putting ingredients that they have in their fridge or their pantry and say,
that's a good
make
idea.
me a meal with this. I really should do that sometime.
That's smart.
Because there's so many times I have like a bag of noodles, a bag of vegetables, and be like, what do I make with this?
You're basically doing Chopped at
Yeah,
home, but now
just-
ChatGPT is your use of like a chef.
It is
try and get rid
crazy
of
how well
everything.
it is. Like, I took a picture of something the other night and asked, like, hey, what is this? And it was able to read the picture and tell me what it was.
Interesting.
But anyways, so where AI, this is happening in China right now, they are using AI robots to now take the place of car salesmen, to where now instead of having a car salesman, like if when you go out to a lot and you're looking at cars, you know, they come running out at you and they come up to you and they try and sell you the car. Well, now it is no longer people at this place in China. It is an AI robot that is there that can have all your questions that you may need, that will try and give you the information on the car and try and sell you the car. And maybe my most impressive feature of this, it will pour you a cup of coffee while you're there, while you're waiting, while you're trying to get your paperwork.
Can it haggle?
Can it what?
Can it haggle?
I don't think so.
Can I get a $35,000 car down to like $29,500?
That'd be a bad AI
Because
bot.
ultimately, that's
the human
a lot
element
of
of
what
it.
this is, right? Is like you go to the guy, you develop some kind of a relationship, and then he tries to do everything he can to get the car to be the cheapest possible for you. A lot of this is, transactional. Like this AI bot is basically just there to answer questions that you have. Isn't that Google? Like, don't I just research the car ahead of time and say, hey, these are the questions that I have? And like, you could use ChatGPT for that, for example. Why not just at this point go to like Carvana?
Yeah, it's like
whatever
It's the robot at Schnucks that goes up and down each aisle and tells me where, the pasta's at. Go check this out. Cool, thanks, appreciate it. I gotta have it.
So this wouldn't help your car
There's got to be a human. Like, I could go up to this AI robot and be like, cool, give me the final price on the vehicle. And if it gives me the price that I can't afford, well, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Okay.
There's got to be a haggle there.
I thought maybe you would enjoy I really thought you would enjoy the lesser human experience, the better.
People love to just think. I mean, there's times that I do.
I was about to say,
not
don't act
like
as
it.
though that's not accurate.
I don't mind that type of human interaction. That's how we did our minivan. Like, go back and forth. I went to 3 different dealerships and finally went to the one that I had the relationship with. There's just times that I don't want to talk to people. Car dealership, you're kind of forced into it.
Most times, if we're being honest.
No, I'd say 50-50. I'd say 50-50.
Would you say that's accurate, T-Bone?
Come on. You said 60-40. I could have.
No, you guys
I
can think what
could've
you want,
maybe bought
50-50. There's times
60-40.
where you're ready to talk and times that you just don't want to.
Okay. I would go lower.
I will say I've seen how quick this robot moves on a video for this. You could avoid them if you didn't want to talk to them.
That's my thing. It's like, ultimately, this is just something that's there, and if you want it, it'll answer questions for you. It's a Google that's available in semi-human form at a moment's notice for you to be able to ask any questions that you might have.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that.
I'm in.
I don't love the idea that they're replacing human jobs, and that's a different conversation for a different day. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to dive into
bring politics to it.
Dive into in or out. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. Katie Wu, our Cardinals insider, joins us at 1:30. But next, who's going to step up in Jordan Walker's absence? And we'll hear from John Mozeliak. He was on MLB Network earlier today talking about why he believes the Cardinals will have difficult decisions to make in late July, and he answered a question on what ownership's view is on all of this. We'll get into that next year on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on MBK, Cardinals are in an interesting spot right now. They don't have Jordan Walker for at least the next week. It sounds like this is something, I heard Oli's comments over the weekend, and then Mo yesterday was on with KMOX, and he said it's just something that kind of started to bother him a little bit. They don't think it's going to be an extended absence, so the hope is this is truly just a 10-day IL stint for Jordan Walker. While he's out, it seems like we're going to get a bunch of Alec Burleson in right field. And it might be that simple, man. It might just be, hey, Walker out, Burleson in right, and now we have one fewer option effectively off of the bench with Valade coming in instead of Burleson coming off of the bench on any given day. Do you guys think it is more complicated than that? Is there going to be more opportunities for Gorman? Like you push Donovan out to the outfield on those days. Gorman gets at second base. How do you view the playing time going now that Walker is out for the next week or so?
I personally, when I saw it, I just assumed that it was just going to be Alec Burleson filling the spot of Jordan Walker, and then you move on from there. I think you get a little bit more opportunities for Nolan Gorman if you shift Brendan Donovan to the outfield if for days that the matchups just don't work best for Alec Burleson. But to me, it works out to where now you give Burleson a little bit of a runway in the outfield to see what he's got for you, and you keep that bat in there consistently, who was good this past month, and then it works out well to the point of Ivan Herrera is your everyday DH, and you don't have to worry about those at-bats. So that's kind of the way I saw it, and from there, it's just Nolan Gorman. You get occasional more opportunities now without Jordan Walker and Alec Burleson fighting for those.
Yeah, I personally would just say this is Burleson in right field, and let's go, but I will find it interesting because they're getting to that kind of inflection point of, okay, is the season still about runway or is it about winning? Because if it's about winning, then I think Burleson's the right answer here. It's just, hey, Burley goes into right field, and we'll kind of figure it out when we go up against a lefty. But if it's still a little bit about runaway, I could see where they maybe use this as the last, okay, this is your last chance, Gorman. We are going to find some games for you by bumping Donovan out to the outfield and getting you a start or two at second base. This is your last chance. This is the final time we're doing the whole runway conversation before we really start to push when Walker comes back in potentially 10 days. So maybe they go that route. I personally would just go with Alec Burleson.
I don't know how you go about this, honestly. I think Gorman probably gets a couple of starts in this stretch. Now, there are 2 days where I think Burleson's probably on the bench, and that'll be against Noah Cameron, who's a left-handed starter for the Royals. I would imagine Burleson's just off that day because he's not been good against lefties at all. And maybe that's the spot where you put Gorman in? It's like, what's the alternative?
You're not gonna let
it should
Valade.
Be a spot for Walker, but Valade's a lefty too, right?
No, he's a righty.
Is he righty? Oh, well, there you go.
I think the Cardinals, you got to ask yourself the question, do you feel like there's more in the...
Valade was a lefty. Sorry.
They got to ask if they think there's more in the tank for Gorman. Because it sure feels like they have decided that, look, this is Gorman. There's nothing that's going to change from it. And this is the role that he's taken on. And if the answer is still, I'd like to see what he's got, then you should probably do the Donovan in the outfield a couple of times so that Gorman can play. But if you're to the point where you know what Gorman is and he's just a bench bat and that's it for you until the deadline or the offseason, then Burleson should be out there every single day.
The problem is, okay, so let's say there's 2 days that, like the Noah Cameron day, no Burleson. The Clayton Kershaw day, no Burleson. All right, that means 4 of the next 6 days you'll be able to get Burleson in the game. And this is really the stretch that we're talking about potentially being without Jordan Walker for. Okay, am I willingly sitting Alec Burleson in one of those games for Nolan Gorman? Because that's basically what you're doing, right? Maybe in one of those games. So we're talking about Gorman effectively starting one more game than he otherwise would have with Walker being available. Okay. That's not runway.
Burleson. Yeah, I just play Burleson.
That's not run. And that day is probably that's when Herrera's behind the plate. Because Herrera's been getting like 1 a week behind the plate, basically. So when Herrera goes behind the plate, Burleson goes to DH, Donovan goes to the outfield, Gorman gets the second base spot that day. Maybe you have a day where Arenado's off. So now he's starting like 2 games. Okay. Good luck, Gorman. Like, go out there. And
go
I
against
think
lefties.
Might as well. I mean,
ultimately, this tells us 2 things. One, this is why they didn't call up Sajaci. Because there's just not really opportunities here. Except for maybe in those 2 games against the lefty starter, you could have seen an opportunity there. But otherwise, there's just not chances available right now for any of these other guys to get in. 2, man, Gorman's just blocked. And it's just the truth. And I think they've acknowledged as much. We can all acknowledge as much. He's not going to get the opportunity he thought he was going to this year. He had his chance, and he didn't make good on it. Burleson did. And guess what? That's why Burleson's playing right now. Because if Gorman was good earlier this season, Gorman would be starting right now at second, Donovan would be in right field, and Burleson would be the one sitting on the bench. This is what it's supposed to look like. The Cardinals did not play in this scenario the pedigree. Like normally it's the contract. This would be the pedigree. Cardinals went away from that, and I'll give them a lot of credit for that. They have not done that at times in the past.
Yeah, it kind of just feels like that they're biding their time to just get him the opportunities to hopefully get a spark, and then you get to the deadline and you see what's out there for him. Because it does feel like he's blocked, because in this scenario, you'd bring up Thomas Sajaci immediately and say, Brendan Donovan, you get some opportunities in the outfield, and you've got Sajaci and Burleson that can do the Walker and Burleson platoon that you were doing.
All right, so John Mozeliak was on MLB Network just a little bit ago. He was on MLB Now with Brian Kinney. And Kinney asked him what I thought were a couple of interesting questions. One was the obvious. The follow-up, though, I thought was pretty good. Here's the first one. When asked about the Cardinals' current outlook toward July, what is his anticipation? Mo then included a little bit of insight in this on how ownership is viewing July, which is new. I had not heard this previously. Give it a listen.
Yeah, like I've been saying to anybody that asks, I hope July 31st is complicated for us. I mean, I really do. And, looking at how we're playing right now, if we can keep this up, I do think ownership will let us look to add pieces that make us stronger.
That's real news.
Bullpen arm. You get in the middle of the order bat. Number 2 starter.
I don't know that was guaranteed.
What, that they would buy?
Yeah, well, that ownership would sign off on it. It's one thing for Mo to say, I would like to add. Ownership could then go to him and be like,
to hell bro. You are.
I mean, last year it was cash neutral. They did not add money at the deadline last year.
To be fair, real quick, that could still be the case, right? Because they were buyers last year, but they were cash neutral.
Can we listen to that last part again one more time? Because he said they could add to the team
to make it better.
I do think ownership will let us look to add pieces that make us stronger.
Add pieces that make us stronger.
They could argue that they did that last season, though.
Yeah. Sure, they did. I do wonder if that also means, I mean, if you're getting approval from ownership, I have to imagine that would suggest that there's going to be a bump in payroll. I mean, they had said before the season that there was still some flexibility there if the right move presented itself. I find that to be really interesting. What'd you guys take away?
I mean, I'm glad to hear that they are viewing this potentially as, hey, if we're in it, we're going to buy. I'm not reading too much into potentially it being ownership's like got this cash. I think that's just great speak from Mo.
Sure.
And again, like to me, they were buyers last year, but they were still cash neutral. And again, they could do that this year too. I don't know how that would happen, but they could do that. I'm just excited to hear like,
it'd be tougher this year because they don't have a player like
Fetty's
Edmund
probably the guy. Fetty's probably the guy that you use as cash neutral. But I'm glad to hear that it's not a, hey, if they're in it, what are they going to do? Could they be buyers? Could they be sellers? No, this was, to me, a message to the guys on the field from Mo that was saying, hey, you guys keep doing this, we're going to bring you reinforcements. Now, to what extent, we don't know. It's nice to see that they might look at this team and say, we're going to help you, and we're going to try and help you get to October.
It's the way that they should have looked at this, to where they've put the performance on the field. Now, things can still change between now and the end of July, but yeah, it's a very warming feeling. I think the ownership part is the one that's the more warming feeling, because for a lot of people, it's always resorts to, well, they don't want to spend money. And T-Bone's right. This could be money in, money out still, or they could say this and nothing comes to fruition and then no trade happens. But they were out there and they were taking calls. That's going to frustrate people as well. But it's a mindset of, we're not looking at this as, hey, this is really fun, but we're still keeping the same thought that we had. They're willing to change their mind as the season moves along if the team performs.
He was also asked, I thought this was a great question. There's no great way for Mo to answer it, but I thought it was a fun question nonetheless. So how do you view your team? Like, could you win a 5 or a 7 game series against these good teams? You really think that you could be a championship contender? Here's what Mo had to say.
You know, when you look at how we've lined up with some of the better clubs this year, we've competed with them. With the exception of maybe this past weekend, we've been in basically every baseball game we've played. And so knowing that, I think just our club as a whole has a lot of internal confidence. And so who we play, I don't think we're scared of. And so, ultimately, you want to see what you look like in the month of July. But in terms of if you're going to play 3-game series, 5-game series, 7-game series, we feel pretty good about our chances.
I haven't heard him say that since 22. Haven't heard him say that about his team in season since 2022. It's the last time I heard him talk like that. And
rightfully so. The last 2 years have been awful. Even when they're winning, it's felt like this is a mirage. It's not real.
I was on my island over here. I thought last year did not feel awful necessarily. It was not a great team, and they were so bad in April that it totally sank their season.
And when a guy got on second, they peed down their leg.
100%. But this does feel different. It looks different. Everything about it is like, okay, this is what a real contender should look and feel like. When he says that, though, man, and again, I truly believe this. Last time I heard him talk like that about his team was 2022. You look back at that deadline, they added real assets. That was the Montgomery and Quintana deadline. Those guys are good pitchers.
Yeah. And Stratton. Stratton was in that deal, too.
Sure. Those are guys that come in and start playoff games for you. Well, should have. Unfortunately, Montgomery came in, and it was a bullpen situation. It's the whole thing. They were going to start Adam Wainwright instead.
Waino would have fixed it.
Yeah. His knee was broken, and then the next year he came back and still wasn't fixed, but whatever. Anyways.
He got to 200 wins.
That was great. It was a really fun day.
Who was the manager then?
Oh,
things didn't go. He learned from it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Remember we talked about him growing?
Yeah. No, you're right.
I said earlier today, I thought he was outmanaged in that series. Oh, God, what a terrible series that was.
Why don't we bring that back up?
Sorry, man.
Do you guys agree with him? You feel like they stack up okay right now against some of the better teams in the National League?
Right now, how could you argue it? I mean, they've gone up against these teams and have played better than most of them, with the exception of that series against the Mets.
On the road, yeah.
They've been, and we figured out what their problems were on the road, but even the Tigers, where they were in that series, it probably should have won 2 of 3. Everybody's power rankings right now has Detroit at the top, if not number 2.
100%.
Every team that they've gone up against that's viewed as a contender in both the American League and National League, they've either won the series or they should have won the series. So I don't know how you could argue the latter.
I'm going to come off negative now. But
oh, boy. Here we go.
I think what Mo says there, of like they don't feel like they're intimidated, I think is true. I don't feel like they've been outmatched in any series to this point. I would
2 of them on the road, New York, Boston, but there were factors there that don't.
I would also add that. Sorry, Ryan Fernandez, but Fernandez did the Fernandez.
And Roycroft.
And Roycroft. But I think when you look at them, best of 3 series, anything can happen. They won't be picked in a series. They could win a series. Best of 5, they won't be picked in it. Anything can happen. They can win it. They get to a 7-game series. If they went that far, they wouldn't win that series, because I think that's when depth really shows. And for all the conversations we've had today, it's clear their depth is not there right now. Now, maybe Mo bolsters that. If Mo bolsters that at the deadline,
in that
maybe
scenario,
there's a chance.
though, like Luke and Baker's probably here, and Thomas DeJacy's probably here. Like those guys, I think, strangely enough, are more valuable in a playoff series than they would be during the regular season. Like DeJacy could absolutely help this team in the playoffs. I think Siani could help this team once you get into the postseason. Like their bench could look completely different at that point in time. I don't think Pozo is on the playoff roster, for example.
See, I think he would be. I think they would operate the way, not with Valade being on the roster, to be clear.
I just think Pages would catch every game. It'd be like, you're going to keep going until you break, and we'll see what this looks like next April. And we've got 17 other catchers in the minor league system.
I assume they're pinch hitting for him, though. That's why I say Pozo will still be here.
Well, that's where... Put Herrera, Contreras behind the plate, Alex.
And see, it's weird. Did you just say Contreras behind the plate?
I said what I said.
It's weird for me because I'm not there yet on the playoffs. I don't know. Playoffs are TBD for me. I haven't seen a majority of these guys that have made this team good even play a game in the playoffs yet. So I'm not judging them off of, well, they could beat anybody in the playoffs. I'm judging them off of beating anybody in the regular season and getting to the playoffs.
Sure.
When they get to the playoffs, that's a whole nother measurement stick for me, because for the last 3-4 years, I saw what was supposed to be your best guys, the 2 players that were in MVP conversations, 3 if you include Tyler O'Neill. They all collapsed.
The reason why, though, it's a necessary topic to have, and I know Splashback Deuce on our YouTube check, he absolutely hates when we talk hypotheticals. You have to do it in this scenario, because if you don't, you can't make a decision on what to do at the deadline. You have to project your team to determine how do we stack up against these other contenders in the National League. Mm-hmm. If you don't, well, then you have no way of knowing what I need to add.
Well, and you
know?
shouldn't.
Like, so that would be.
Yeah, like the question they have to ask is at the deadline or right before the deadline, okay, here's what the playoff field looks like. Here's kind of what we think it's going to be. We think we're going to be in that conversation. How we beat the Dodgers in a best of 5 if this. We beat the Dodgers in a best of 7 if this. And sometimes the answer might just be, man, I really hope their pitching breaks because they're a juggernaut. That might be the answer. But to me, you have to position yourself to plug up your holes, right? Well, the one thing you don't want when you get to the playoffs is a question mark. And I think in 22 they had that, and that was in the back end of their bullpen, or in the like middle innings of their bullpen, right? They turned to Palante there in that game, and it kind of got away from him and got away from Helsley. You don't want to have question marks by the time you get to the playoffs.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll talk to our friend Katie Wu. She's the Cardinals insider for The Athletic. But next, time for in or out. You guys give us a scenario. We'll tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. Hey, it's BK for my friends at Victory Men's Health. It is time to unlock your inner champion, and the place to do so is at victorymenshealth.com. Write that down somewhere. victorymenshealth.com. Super easy process. Book that first appointment today by going to their website. It's in the top right corner of the page. Just put in your name, email, phone number. Tell them BK with 101 ESPN sent you, and you can tell them how they can unlock your inner champion. That means different things for different people. For some, that might mean weight loss goals that you're trying to meet. For others, maybe it's low testosterone. You're feeling those symptoms. You don't have the same energy that you once did. You don't get the same amount of results out of your workouts. If that's affecting you, it's possible it's due to low testosterone, and you might not even know it yet. Go get those levels tested over at Victory Men's Health. They can also help you with erectile dysfunction. Many other services available for you over there as well. Vitamin infusions, supplement shop, red light therapy program, cardiovascular testing. It's all at Victory Men's Health. 4 great locations and online at victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for in or out. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. All right, boys, let's start out with this. In or out, the Cardinals finished the season with 0 players that hit more than 25 home runs. The Cardinals will not have a 25 home run hitter. In or out?
I'm going to say in. We're in June now, and we just have not seen that power surge, and I don't know if it's coming. So I don't think you get anybody past 25.
I don't think anybody's on pace now, right? Newbar's the closest.
Newt is the highest on the team. He's on pace for 22.
I'm going to say out. I think one guy will get there. And my bet wouldn't even be Newbar. I'm still holding out hope on Contreras. I think Contreras is still due for a huge run at some point. I don't know when it's coming. I thought it was coming at the beginning of May, and then it kind of cooled off after a week. But I can see him still getting to that spot. I'm still betting on Wilson Contreras as the first baseman.
I'm out on this as well. I think somebody will do it. I don't know who it's going to be, though. I don't. It could be Adolis Newbar. It could be Wilson Contreras. I still think Ivan Herrera has more power than what he's shown recently. He only has 5 on the year. Has he hit a home run since coming back?
I think he's hit 1.
Is it just the one? Yeah, he has 1 home run in the month of May. It was May 12th. So that was it. It was just that 1 home run against Philly.
This could be a trick question. Could be a guy from outside the organization, right? Maybe Mo goes out and shops and gets a guy that's already hit 30 bombs.
Ketel Marte is a Cardinal? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, that would be a dream
I don't know
come
who would
true.
be more excited, Alex or me.
Oh, dude, all 3 of us would be.
It might be Alex, because Alex is that's the number 1 guy from the Diamondbacks
That was my Nolan Arenado 95% prediction. I just never predicted Ketel Marte would be here because I didn't think it was possible.
I also didn't know he was going to be this good. That's the problem, is he didn't just become a good player. He is excellent. All right, Alex, what do you got for us today?
In or out, guys, the Colorado Rockies finished the season with the fewest wins in Major League Baseball history.
This is horrible, man.
1899, there was the Cleveland Spiders had 20 wins. So they'd have to only get 10 more wins between now and the end of the regular season.
I'm out.
God,
They can't possibly be this bad.
I want to be in so bad.
Have you seen their run differential?
Yeah, minus 153. Is that what it is?
185.
Oh, my God. Okay. Must have given up some 30 runs lately.
The third worst in Major League Baseball is minus 93. They are literally twice as bad in run differential as the third worst team in Major League Baseball. Oh, it's embarrassing.
I'm in on this.
I'm in.
I watched them play the Cubs when they were in Chicago last week, I think it was. And the Cubs walked them off in the bottom of the 11th. And, they were up 3-2. And I was watching that game going, you can do it, little guys. You can do it. And then the Cubs walked them off. And I went, you quit celebrating. You just beat the worst team in baseball. You walk that game off. You don't need to do the whole Gatorade bath. You should just run to the dugout.
I don't get it, man.
Austin Gomber has allowed 30 home runs this season.
I don't think that must be I don't think he's pitched this year.
Oh, yeah, it's not, that is last year. I thought that was
Kyle Freeland's been bad. A lot of their guys that, in theory, coming into the year, if I said, hey, the Cardinals acquired this guy, you wouldn't have been impressed, but it'd been it's a solid ad, like Kyle Freeland, Herman Marquez, and Antonio Senzazella, I believe, is over there. Awful. All 3 of them, terrible.
The Cardinals play against the Colorado Rockies on July 21st.
You want to go?
They're going to lose that series.
No, do you guys have this same stuff? I kind of get nervous in games like that where I'm like, you can't lose.
That's PTSD.
This is a total no-win proposition. You could technically put up a win, but the only thing that I could think that entire series is please don't lose. You can't. This is the one you can't lose. And the same thing is true for the White Sox. You can't lose that series. They have 0 times this season in which they have won back-to-back games against the same team. They've won back-to-back games once, but it was the final game of one series leading into the first game of another. It's the only time that's happened for them all season long. Just insane, dude. So bad. All right, T-Bone, what do you got?
Guys, in or out, the Cardinals will add a starter that starts a playoff game for them at this year's trade deadline.
I'm going to be optimistic, BK.
Hell yeah.
I'll say in. I think that's the thing they're going to be missing. If I put myself in the Mo Bowtie shoes real quick, I would be looking to acquire a starter that slots in front of Eric Fetty. That's my whole goal. Basically, the Blues we've been talking about, number 2 center has to be an upgrade over Braden Shin. That's the goal, right? You can end up lower, but that's what you want. I think that should be the goal this year. My hope is they can acquire this year's version of Jordan Montgomery. Don't know who that pitcher is going to be. Don't know where he's available. We're too early right now. But that would be my goal if I'm in Mo's shoes.
Yeah, I want to say in as well, but part of me wonders if they're going to be looking for power. And I don't know where that guy's going to play because they have no positions available. But, it's very evident that your power is lacking significantly. Do you go out there and find a bat that can fit in somewhere in your lineup that can provide that pop that you just don't have right now? I wonder if that's a little bit more easier to obtain than it would be to go get a number 2 starter.
I would say in on this. I like the bat idea. I'm kind of with you. I don't know where you're getting him. I do think they're probably going to need a right-handed bat potentially to help them off the bench, especially if Walker continues down to where he struggles. Then maybe you could platoon that right field spot. But I think they're going to be shopping for a starter. Now, what kind of starter I think could end up being very underwhelming because I think they're probably more looking for their Quintana than they are their Jordan Montgomery. And to be fair, Quintana was very good for them. But we all agree that guy's more of, and I know he started game 1, that guy is more of a 3-4.
Sure.
And he just went on an incredible run for them. I think that's kind of the guy they're going to be searching for, and I'm going to say this name because he feels like a Cardinal through and through.
Ego Shiaka?
No, who's that?
Is that the Orioles guy?
No, that guy makes a ton of sense too. But
he feels very Cardinals.
Tyler Anderson was the name, and I was thinking about Tyler Anderson. No. Tyler Anderson, or I could totally see Quintana being brought back if Milwaukee falls out of it.
You want to hear a list of pitchers that are upcoming free agents that it could be on a seller this year? Gallen, Nick Martinez, Charlie Morton, Merrill Kelly, Andrew Heaney, Jose Quintana, Walker Buehler, Tyler Mahle, Sugano, and then Chris Bassett. Mally's a name that I would go ahead and circle that one.
I could see Charlie Morton being one. Grizzled vet to come in. I could see that one happening.
I would throw up.
That is not a guy that would fit into the criteria that I mentioned. He wouldn't fit into this rotation currently.
Currently, no, but it does feel like he's starting to figure it out.
That's a Cardinals move,
and if he does, he might make sense by the time we get to the end of July.
41-year-old who's pitched and performed in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mentioned this before. I would have signed him over.
Say it.
Waino.
Yeah.
But he was a good pitcher. I just don't know that he's got that anymore in him.
I agree.
Tyler Mahle, though, that's a guy I would have some interest in. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We'll do this rapid fire style. In or out, the Cardinals make the World Series before the Blues make the Stanley Cup final. Cardinals World Series before the Blues Stanley Cup.
I'll say out.
I think I'll say out as well. The path just looks so hard. The Dodgers, Phillies, Braves, all those teams are still staying.
Agreed. In or out, Jack Caglione plays tomorrow's game against the Cardinals and hits a home run. I think he hits his first home run in the game that I will be attending on a Wednesday against Miles Michaelis, so I would be out.
He's a lefty, right? Yeah, I'm out. Palante's actually gone back to his reverse splits thing, so I'll say Palante won't give up a homer to him. I could see Michaelis
I'll say in. He said it's not going to happen until Wednesday, so I could see it happening before.
Or BK will be parking and then he'll hit it. And that's a BK move.
In 50 games in the minor leagues, he had 15 home runs. 15 in 50 games. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for in or out. If you guys have any scenarios, go ahead and get them in there. Guys, in or out, if McDavid does not win the Cup this year, he will finish his career without winning one with the Oilers.
Oh, out. I think if he doesn't get one here, there's going to be real questions of does he decide to go elsewhere instead of Edmonton? Because he's eligible to sign a contract extension after this year. At some point, if you're him, you start to wonder, is it going to happen in Edmonton or do I need to go elsewhere?
I'm out. I think he'll eventually win a Cup with Edmonton. Edmonton's got maybe it's this year, but even if it's not, I think he'll re-sign with Edmonton because him and Draisaitl can clearly get you to the promised land.
Do you guys think they're winning it this year? I agree with you, by the way. I do think they'll get one.
I think they get it this year.
I do too. So. I think Florida? I think Florida's still got the better team.
Yeah, I would take Edmonton in this one, but it'll be close. By the way, remember that bet that we talked about the other day where they had Oklahoma City and the Edmonton Oilers remaining? Oh boy, I hope he didn't hedge.
Cash out.
I still would have hedged.
Cash out.
You'd cash out now?
Yep.
I think Oklahoma City is winning that thing in 5.
Oh,
maybe
relax.
4. Honestly, if they could, they'd probably win it in 3.
That's ridiculous.
Edmonton, though, this one I have no idea. I'd say it's pretty 50-50. I'll personally go with Edmonton.
It's going 7 games, and I'm not basing a large sum of money on Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final.
I'm just not taking that blasphemy against my Pacers. What the hell was that?
They've got no shot, man. Coming up next, Katie Wu here on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here. They Sports Center update brought to you by Selke Heating and Cooling. Cardinals fell to the Rangers yesterday 8-1 as they dropped 2 of 3 to Texas. They are off today as they return homeward tomorrow night. They'll start a 3-game set with the Kansas City Royals. 6:45 will be first pitch tomorrow night. Michael Lorenzen will be on the mound for KC. Andre Palante will get the start for St. Louis. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Selke Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
Cardinals lose 2 of 3 over the weekend down in Texas. Katie Woo joins us now to discuss it all. Katie is, of course, the Cardinals insider for The Athletic. She joins us each Monday via the Callier and Thompson hotline. Katie, the world is now ending because the Cardinals have lost 2 out of 3, which means everything is doom and gloom. How are you doing this morning?
It's so funny, guys, because I've seen a lot of comments both on Twitter, on The Athletic, basically anywhere saying this last series against the Rangers, the Cardinals have now regressed to the means.
Really?
And I'm like, okay, look, was it a good series in Arlington? No, I didn't think the Cardinals played good baseball really at all. However, going into the series, they had won 8 of their last 10 and had split 1. So they were 8-1-1 in their last 10 series. They were going to have a performance like this. I would argue that this is the anomaly based on what we've seen over the last 6-7 weeks. But, hey, what do I know? We'll see what the Cardinals really look like in June, though. I'm sure we'll get into this. It's a pretty daunting month ahead of schedule, but I think it's pretty safe to say we can just wash that Rangers series.
No doubt. Saturday was a good day for him. Played great defense. Sonny Gray was fantastic. Offense was opportunistic. But to me, Katie, we talked about this. I was looking at T-Bone and said T-Bone's name. I apologize. We were talking about this in the open today. It was really the offense that stuck out. I mean, you score a total of 4 runs in 3 days. That's not great. And it's the lack of power that showed itself. 0 home runs, only 3 doubles in that series. Is that something that at least you're like monitoring, or do you view that as just, hey, they went like 2 for 20 with runners in scoring position? That happens sometimes. They've earned the right to be bad for one series.
I think a little bit of both. I know obviously this is not a good example, but for as bad as the Rangers offense had been coming into the series, their pitching had been dominant. You see arms like Jacob deGrom, obviously you need no explanation. Jack Leiter is going to be a stud. So I can attribute a little bit of that offense production to just the arms the Cardinals faced. But one thing that I'm looking towards in the next few weeks or so is how the Cardinals offense responds. And when I look at it, this offense is comprised of mostly young players, as we know. That was the whole goal of this season. And players are going to have to adjust to the league, and they've done a nice job. You think of what Victor Scott did in April. You think of what Alec Burleson has done lately, Ivan Herrera. But the more that these guys play, the more ammunition, if you will, the league has against them. So the league can now start adjusting to them. So this is going to be a season-long version of adjustments, and I'm just trying to see how these young players like Victor Scott adjust to the league's adjustments against them. That's why I think we might see some dips in the offense and why sometimes we can call it inconsistent. That's kind of by design. The league is trying to figure out how to pitch to the St. Louis Cardinals overall, especially this young up-and-coming group, and it's going to be a lot of adjustments back and forth. So that, I think, is the bigger story behind a bad series in Arlington. It's can these young hitters adjust? Can Ivan Herrera, who's not going to hit 400 forever, obviously, adjust to the opposing pitching, making adjustments against him? Can Victor Scott do that? We saw Alec Burleson do it from April to May. The numbers look much better. So it's just a continuous battle of adjustments for this young group. Let's see where it goes from there.
Is that why this month, Katie, is going to be so fascinating? Because, of course, the big storylines are, where is this team at once you get to the trade deadline? But also the teams you're going up against with where you're sitting right now in the standings does present you an opportunity to go one of two ways.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to learn so much about the Cardinals in June for so many reasons. One being there are just 2 off days all month, one being today. Yeah. So the Cardinals will play 28 games in the next 29 days. So what we saw in May, because they had almost every single Thursday off day, or Thursday was a day off, a scheduled day off, they were able to use their top guys every day. They could use their A lineup, if you will, because you had a built-in rest day for all of your starters. You had a built-in rest day for your rotation. They will not have that in June, and they're going to have to get creative on both sides of the ball for playing time. Now, will this maybe work itself out a little bit with the Nolan Gorman playing time situation? Yes, that could help them get him more reps. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that the Cardinals have to, insert guys into a rotation. But overall for June, you look at some of the names and the teams that we're going to see. We're going to see The Dodgers this weekend, 4 against Milwaukee, which is heating up, 4 against the Cubs, who they have not seen all year. This will be a good test for them across the board, both production, both performance, their rotation, how guys are going to step up without a lot of rest. We'll know a lot more about this club at the end of the month heading into July, which, as you know, July equals trade deadline, and we'll have a much better idea of what the Cardinals are going to look like both in the short-term and long-term future based on the next 4 weeks.
You mentioned this last night in your podcast with Bernie, Katie. What do you anticipate them doing with the rotation? Do you think this is going to be a, hey, Michael McGreevy gets a spot starter too? Is this Steven Matz gets an opportunity to be an opener since he's not necessarily stretched out the way that he once was? How do you foresee them managing their rotation now that they don't have the off days built in on Thursdays?
Well, I really hope we see Michael McGreevy take a spot start, and this is all just my opinion, speculation here, but when you look at the Cardinals right now, you have Palante, Michaelis Libby taking on the Royals. That means Sonny Gray gets the start on Friday, the first of 3 against LA. That's a good time for the Cardinals to kind of reassess their rotation and see when they would need a spot starter. The next day off is the 16th, so that's 2 weeks from now, and then they don't have another one until July 3rd. So you guys do the math, they're going to need a spot starter. The reason why I believe that they should go with Michael McGreevy is because it's twofold. One, isn't that kind of his job right now to serve as that depth piece in AAA? Yeah, and he's been pretty effective each time they've asked him to do that. But another reason is that Steven Matz has also been equally as effective in the bullpen. And when you think about what the Cardinals relief pitchers did in May, they had the second lowest ERA for the bullpen across the majors. A big part of that was what Steven Matz is able to do from the left side, and he's done a really nice job locking down those late innings. Yes, Jojo Romero and John King look better, but I still think Matz has just been so effective in that role, and that bullpen has been critical for all of the Cardinals' late inning wins. I'm not sure if it's the best strategy to take him out from there. Then you're also configuring just how much length can Steven Matz get you, because for the last 4 or 5 weeks, he's been mostly a reliever, and he's done maybe 2 innings. So even if you do take him out of a spot start, he's not going to give you a ton of length because he can't. He's not built up for that. So now you have 2 holes in the bullpen. You're taking Matz out of a very effective role that he's been in relief, and you're going to deplete your bullpen on his spot start anyway because he can't give you the length. The right thing to do in this situation that makes the most sense, call McGreevy up, be your spot starter. We'll see if that's an option for the Cardinals. I'm under the belief that it should be. We will see. Since we're talking about the 13 games in a row with no days off, Katie, of course, Jordan Walker going on the IL over the weekend. Do you believe that it's just going to be a runway of Alec Burleson in the outfield spot, or how do you see the Cardinals handling no Walker? I think, well, the good news is, first, for Walker, is I don't think this is a significant injury. The Cardinals expect him to be back almost as soon as he can. This IL date is retroactive to May 29th, which puts him potentially back by the end of the weekend. So we'll see. Oli Marmol said he didn't necessarily think that Walker would need a rehab stint anyway after this. So it's just kind of patchworking this. You'll see Ryan Blade get some starts against lefties. You'll see Alec Burleson get the bulk of the starts against righties. When you look at Alec Burleson's platoon splits, dramatically more effective against right-handed pitching than left-handed pitching. They do need to work in some at-bats for Gorman still. Oli Marmol talked about this. When you look at the underlying metrics for Gorman, I mean, he cut a strikeout rate down 11%. He has the lowest chase rate of his career. He's making more contact. We're just not seeing it a lot because he's not getting a lot of playing time. So that's where I think the playing dynamic is going to be a little bit more balanced. But for now, it's just kind of patchworking, and based on opposing matchups, opposing starters, the Cardinals are going to see a ton of good pitching over the next 10 days. So we'll see. I'm more intrigued to see how the next 4 weeks go, even with Walker back, on how Oli Marmol is going to work in that rotation.
Katie, final question for you here. If there is a unit on this team, or a player on this team even, that you think has more to give in the month of June than they did in May, because they were pretty damn good, best record in baseball in the month of May, what do you think that unit or that player is?
Oh, this is a good question. I thought we saw Mason Wynn take strides forward. I think we continue to see Lars Newbar become the outfielder that the Cardinals had always hoped he would be. I love what we're seeing out of Victor Scott defensively. I think this is a great chance for him to make those adjustments offensively like we talked about. It's tapered off a little bit, especially against lefties. Then again, Victor Scott is going to be a defensive first center fielder, but he certainly has the capabilities of hitting for some pop when needed. I guess I'm looking at those three. And I mean, it's hard to ask more for Brendan Donovan at this point, but I think what I'm asking from Cardinals fans is when All-Star voting opens on June 4th to really put some effort into that, because I think he should be there. I'm not sure if he's going to have the name recognition as a ton of second basemen in the National League, but he has been, in my opinion, the most valuable player for the Cardinals this year. But as I'm looking overall, I think it's just the young kids continuing to produce. And a lot of those guys, like Nootbaar, like Mason Wynn, like Brendan Donovan, weren't necessarily in that transition year group, but they were still very much question marks. Well, maybe not Mason Wynn, but onto what their roles could be going forward. I'd like to continue seeing them building upon what they did in May, because I think the Cardinals have a really exciting core coming up.
Katie, we appreciate the time as always. We'll certainly be reading your great work over at The Athletic and hearing you on Cardinal territory as well. All the best. We'll talk with you again next week.
You got it, guys. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. That's Katie Wu joining us as she does each and every Monday here on BK and Ferrario. Appreciate her time as always. We will put a bow on this thing with the rewind coming up next.
Alex Ferrario with you to tell you about my friends out at Classic Air Care. You hear the words maintenance agreement, and that is probably the most important thing this time of year if you've got an older HVAC system. Making sure you're giving it the proper professional preventative maintenance that maintains that older unit as long as you can, and that's where Classic Air Care comes into play. I did this back in 2016 when we first purchased our home. It's mostly because my dad has been using them since he's owned a home, and it's a company that comes out twice a year, a part of this maintenance agreement. In the fall and in the springtime, they clean the unit, they fine-tune the unit, but then they make sure that it's able to get you through that hot summer that we're about to go through. So give them a call today and get on the schedule, because when you're a part of that maintenance agreement, if issues pop up with an older unit when it's 99 degrees outside, you get priority scheduling to get Classic Air Care out to take care of that unit. Plus, they do furnace cleanings as well. They've got duct cleanings that you could sign up for, and financing options if you're in the market for purchasing a new HVAC system. Use the company that has been making people comfortable since 1926. That's Classic Air Care and ClassicAirCare.com.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. If you have missed any of our show today, it was only 3 hours, not 4 hours like it was on Thursday and Friday. We appreciate you tuning in. If you missed any of it, though, you want to go back and listen to it, you can check it out on YouTube. That's an easy way to do so, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. You can also check us out on the 101 ESPN app, which is free to download and super easy to use, and that is sponsored by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. And 101ESPN.com is also where you can go. Those podcasts are sponsored by
Schaefer Door Company.
All right, let's finish off the show where we began, which is the weekend for the Cardinals. Listen, it wasn't good. It was not a fun weekend to watch the Cardinals, unless the only game that you watched was on Saturday, which felt like the Cardinals of most of the season, honestly. ABC Baseball, score a couple of runs. Sonny Gray was fantastic. Great defense overall. That game was excellent. Otherwise, just a stinker. What'd you guys make of it? Big picture-wise, does it matter? Is it a big deal that they lost 2 of 3 and lost those games by a combined score of 19-2?
No. To me, it was an anomaly. It was the first time that I was waiting for the offense to pull the Cardinals back in, and they didn't do it since the Boston Red Sox series. But you're due one of these games for how many times they won in the month of May. If it continues, then I guess you could start asking some questions. But I think you were right in what you said in the open, BK. Like, the numbers, they look alarming, especially against the Texas Rangers. But then when you look at it and be like, look, you're talking about 2 blow-up innings that really put those 2 games out of reach for the Cardinals. So to me, it was an anomaly. It was a one-off. It was a good road trip for the Cardinals, and really it was a great month of May for the Cardinals. How do you respond? That's what we find out.
The lack of power is real. That's something that we've talked about, though, and I think you saw that show up over the weekend. 2 for 19 with runners in scoring position, and when you don't have power and you're not hitting with runners in scoring position, it's just going to be it's going to make for a long weekend. The fact that they won one of those games, honestly, is kind of a minor miracle. Probably you could have easily been swept in that series. You were able to get it, though, and Sonny Gray was great in that game, and he was the one that more or less allowed you to win. So credit to them for getting the game. Now you just can't allow that to continue. You take this off day, get yourself back on track, start that series against Kansas City. They're going to be flying high with like some extra motivation. They got their top prospect, Jack Caglione, who's going to be a part of the roster now. They've got a couple of solid starters with Cameron and Lugo. Cameron, you've already seen him once. I'll be curious to see. Cardinals have had a much better hitting approach this season. What does it look like the second time that they've seen Cameron, who's a soft tossing guy for the Royals? That's where I need to see some improvements. You can't allow a 3-game stinker to become 9 games where you don't play well against Kansas City and the Dodgers. But as long as you prevent that, I look at it as kind of a one-off. Similar. Eventually, we got to the place where we viewed Boston and the Mets series on the road as outliers. Right now, I'm viewing the Rangers series as an outlier as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it is, for me, right now, an outlier. There are some things that are at least worth keeping an eye on. And I think the number one thing for me when you look at that, look, we've talked about what's it look like if their defense regresses. That is one thing. But the number one thing for me is, okay, what does the offense look like as Herrera starts to come back to earth? Right, he went through a 10-game stretch. I'm not overly panicked about it. He wasn't going to hit 350 or 400 all year long. But in the last 10 games, Herrera is going through a slump. And in those 10 games, the Cardinals have scored the 5th fewest runs in baseball. So that is something worth keeping an eye on of, okay, is it we talked last week, is it a, hey, if Newpar goes, the Cardinals go? I think it's Herrera. Herrera might be the guy that is the driving force for what their offense looks like. But again, I'm not overly worried about that.
My biggest complaint about the weekend was Roku. Like, the Cardinals were bad. Roku's performance, or whoever was hitting the button to go back to a game in the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning after a pitching change, that guy, listen, I'm not calling for anybody to lose their jobs, but he's got to get better, man. Like, that was one of the worst performances by anybody involved in a major sports production in baseball history.
I didn't even know what you were talking about when you texted us, because I was watching on an MLB TV, and I was like, man, like, he's talking about the game not coming back. Like, I'm watching this. Like, what are you talking about? And then I found out.
If you were watching on Roku, the Cardinals or the Rangers, that happened for the Rangers as well, they would go to a pitching change. And by the time that you saw the game again, it had been like literally 5 real-time minutes, and there had been 4 more runs that had been scored. And you'd be like, what happened? Like, how were those runs scored? What is going on? I feel like I'm in like the Twilight Zone right now. I don't know how that happens on a professional major league production, and yet somehow it did. They had the stream, clearly. Roku just didn't fire it back on at the time that they were supposed to. It was baffling to watch. on the plus side, it seems like about half of our audience didn't know it was on Roku to begin with. So they did not have to watch a bad Cardinals game with terrible production yesterday. So good on all of you for that.
How do you even advertise that we're going to be on Roku? I saw no advertisement for it.
It wasn't good. The next game on Roku is Sunday the 29th against Cleveland. So be prepared for that. You can get it on your phone. It's a super easy app to use. I just hope that they
turn it on,
show the game this time around.
Or we just everybody has to go the distance. Yeah. No pitching changes. Yeah. We're gonna play this like it's the 60s.
Yep, 27 up, 27 down.
If you'd like to hear our thoughts about the Cardinals' depth, the Blues needing to go into the same waters as everybody else when it comes to their number 2 center, Oli Marmol building a case to remain the Cardinals' manager, me and Alex yelling at one another about plus minus and Robert Thomas's place in the Selke Trophy conversation, and what John Mozeliak had to say about the Cardinals' plans as we get closer to the trade deadline. You can find all of that in our conversation with Katie Woo on the podcast page after the show today, 101ESPN.com, the free 101 ESPN app, and on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. For Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane is coming up next here on 101 ESPN.